I am live. Where is everybody tonight? Everybody's late again. Yes, Tim went out for cigarettes and never came back. Though he's on Graphic Man's channels on Wednesday night, and he's been doing his Sunday morning shows. I was just watching one of his Sunday morning show where Tim was talking about how he wasn't going to be watching the Sandman TV show. Okay, I'm not either. But I never read the Sandman. I never liked the Sandman comic much, so it's one of his favorites. So, but I don't feel any drive to have to watch the movies and TV shows of favorites of mine. Matter of fact, I often like the ones that aren't favorites. That way, I don't have to worry about any feeling I may have had for the show years ago, which I don't really care about either. I've watched all the Disney Marvel shows, and they're okay. I watch them. I never think about them another minute. So there's some shows I couldn't, like The Boys is one I particularly enjoy. But Lock and Key, didn't like that one very much. Much prefer the comics. I'm with you about movie and TV. I'm just a comic. Comics are my favorite medium. I like them better than movies, and I like them better than TV. So why am I going to get all excited about a movie made about a comic? Especially like all these Marvel movies made about comics I haven't read in 3 decades. I really don't. I've probably seen about half of the Marvel movies. I like the medium of comics, not everything else related. Exactly. I like the I would rather read a comic than watch a movie or TV. That's just me. I do watch movies and TVs because sometimes it's just easier. But comics are my favorite medium. Comics, bring me to that place I like better than that entertainment place, that space in my head better than movies and TV. Not that I don't like movies and TV. Well, I must say I've grown to like TV more than movies. Just because TV and movies have kind of switched in terms of movies used to be the long form of storytelling, and TV was sort of the short form of storytelling. But they switched now that they use TV shows to tell a story over an entire season. TV shows are now the long form of storytelling, and movies are the short form. So to me, it's like movies are like so short; they hardly have time to go into anything. Mine account, he read some Sandman some 6 years ago and enjoyed it very much. Didn't love it. Yeah, I read a little of it in the 90s. Didn't enjoy it that much. I just read the first issue again when it came out in the facsimile edition. It was okay. It's just not my thing. That's all. Good evening, Tylocks the Mighty. How are you doing tonight? I'm sitting here waiting for everyone to show up. Everyone's been late last week and this week. We'll have to see. Well, Paulo's working, so he'll be an hour late. I don't know where Chris and Wilson are. And Scott was supposed to be here, but then he said he went to a concert last night and now has no voice. So I don't know what he was doing at that concert, who he was shouting at. But he has no voice. What was I going to talk? I had a thought just before I came on. Now I can't remember what it is. Oh, well. And I also, let me show you something. I only got 4 new comics this week, but I got the final collected edition in of Luba 3 Daughters. So now I have Luba 3 Daughters, Luba in America, and Luba the Book of Ophelia. And these are the 3 trade paperbacks that are collected in the Luba Omnibus hardcover, except the hardcover is 6 by 9 inches, and these are 7.5 by 11. So much better. What do we got here? The last comic movie I liked was Logan, and enjoyed Josh Brolin's version of Cable. Okay, watch the Josh. I did not watch the second. I watched the first Deadpool. That was fine. I just never got around to watching the second one. I did watch Logan. That was okay. Like I said, I watch these movies. I never think about them another minute. But I'm glad to have. Like I said, I think these. I wanted to get the Luba hardcover was on my pull list, on my wish list on Amazon for a decade before I finally just took it out of the library. I'm like, you know what, I'm going to take it, and I took it out of the library and enjoyed it. And I was like, I'm going to have to buy that one of these days. But then it went out of print. It was $60. I got these for about $30 for the three of them. And like I said, in the hardcover is only 6x9. I'd much rather have the bigger versions of it. And also, as I don't know how you guys feel about omnibuses. I like them. I generally like omnibuses, but they're often too big. I mean, omnibuses are great because you get so much material in one place, and it's all in, like I think one of the last omnibuses I read years ago was the John Carter Warlord of Mars omnibus from Marvel. If which was like 27 issues or something like that. So if you want to read all 27 issues of Warlord of Mars, it was great to get that omnibus and have them all in there. And they usually are bound pretty well, and open up pretty well. Yeah, I don't like reading at a table. Exactly. But still, it's kind of like I prefer the what are they called? The Ultimate Editions. I got all of Invincible over there in the Ultimate Editions, which are 10 to, I think they're 12 issues. 12 issues seems fine. That seems to me to be the best size for for an oversized hardcover, 12 issues. But I understand, I understand people liking the omnibuses, and I understand like the publishers liking the omnibus format, because then they only have to have one book in print. It's like they can put all the John Carter Warlord of Mars stuff in one book, and then have that in print, and not have worried about having to get any other book, and let it go out of print. And then 5-10 years later, bring that one book back into print. They don't have to keep track of 3 books. I understand from their point of view, but I like this. I like the slimmer volume. I find them easier to read. And like I said, I really wanted these two because I want the art big. If you give me a choice between 6x9 and 7.5x11, I'm going for 7.5x11. Just because, I'm not a teenager sticking them in my backpack to read later. I'm putting them on my shelf to read in that chair behind me. But yeah, I was happy I finally decided to get these. And I'm glad they're on my shelf now. Now I can pull them down and reread them someday. And by the way, this is a really weird hair technique that Gilbert uses for Luba. I mean, that's such like a teenager hair technique, but he's like stuck with it all these years. That's just kind of scribbling. There she is in the back there. It's just kind of scribble. I always find that funny. His drawing is actually really sophisticated, except for that hair technique. He's never sort of adapted a new hair technique for it. And as you can see, it doesn't really work in a big format. I've always found that a little strange about Luba. I mean, it works fine, small, as just kind of scribbling, like there she is down. But big, it's really weird to see that sort of just scribbling that signifies nothing. Hair does not look anything like that. It's not made up of little 1-inch strands all bundled together. I always found that a weird thing he did with her hair. I'll never get rid of floppies and seek them out because of ease of reading and the time it takes. I like the smell and weight of comics. I only buy trades and book versions of the only option. Yeah, like Love and Rockets, I think is really good in trade because it's all Love and Rockets is really an anthology book. You just get a part of a story in every issue. So if you want to read just Gilbert's Luba, Here it is. So I think Love and Rockets particularly works, though I buy the individual issues, particularly works well in collected edition, because really that's not really like a monthly comic in terms of, it's not really structured like a monthly comic. It never has been, where there's like a cliffhanger at the end and a recap of it or anything like that. It's just kind of, here's 10 pages of the Luba story. But I actually like the episodic, I like the episodic nature of comics. I like the periodical nature of comic books too, because I like going to the comic shop and picking up this week's comics. I like reading 5 or 6 different stories a week rather than 12 issues of one comic. Often when I pull out something like Luba to read, I'll read 20 or 30 pages and put it down and pick something else up and read it. So even when I'm reading like a collected edition, I often won't read it straight through. That's just how I like to. I also like talking about the comics. I like living with the comics for a month before the next issue comes out. Now, not all comics play to that strength. There are a bunch of comic books that are just like, here's 20 pages of a story, and they don't really care about any cliffhangers or anything like that. And those I'm kind of okay with missing, picking up and trade. Hey, Jared, have you picked up Where's the Furthest Place from Here? Yes, I have. I've enjoyed Where's the Furthest Place from Here. That's kind of, to me, Where's the Furthest Place from Here kind of was, did it real well, because it had like that first issue was like triple sized and really got me hooked. And like the second issue was like double sized. So they gave us a lot of Where's the Furthest Place from Here to begin with. And and that was especially good because the pacing of it was sort of slow. And they really worked with that triple size format well, where they gave you quiet moments. They gave you, sort of exciting moments. I thought they did a really good job with the actual comic books of Where's the Furthest Place from Here. I got to say, I really enjoyed that. Do you manage to read comics every single day, Jared? Just about. Sometimes I can go for a couple or few days without reading comics, but I usually read something. Like I've been reading a couple of novels recently, just random thrillers. But I generally like, when I get my comics on Wednesday, however many I get, I like to have read. There's Wilson. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay now that I'm home.
All right.
I had to deliver a package to my sister's place. She's about a mile away. But then the skies opened up and it started raining and I was soaking wet. And I had an umbrella with me.
I'm just talking to a few people about comics so far. Mind the Comics. Gus was just asking me if I read comics every single day. And I do, like I said, just about, like I buy my comics on Wednesday. Mm-hmm. And I like to have them all. And I don't buy a ton. I buy anywhere from 5 to 10 comics a week. 10 would be a lot. This week I only got 4. And I like to have all of them read by this show Friday night, which I usually, it's not much of a problem. And then what I do is I like to read all my comics twice before I put them away. So I'll read them all once before Friday, and then I'll keep them in my to be read pile. And I'll read them over the next 2 weeks, let's say. I'll read them a second time and put them away. Because what I wanted to do was, I started doing that maybe 15 years ago, because I found what was happening was, I'm pretty good at putting my comics away. I've got a system. I've got everything organized. So what I would do is I'd read the comic. I'd, put it in my to be read pile, read it that week, and put it away. And then it was like it never existed, because it goes in the away. And I found myself not remembering what happened in the issue. I found myself, and I said to myself, you know what? I'm like, I went back to my childhood where I said, you know what I used to do? When you were a kid, you lived with your comics.
Yes.
You bought new comics that week and you read them 9 times over the next month. So I started doing it. I said, you know what? I'm going to just leave them out and read them twice before I put them away. So now I leave them out and sometimes I won't even read them. Sometimes you just like pick them up and go, oh yeah, I got this week, and thumb through it for a second and then put it back. So that's kind of how I read my comics now. And I do pretty much read comics every day because if I'm not reading it's been taking me longer to get through my second read of like last week and the week before's comics because I've been reading some trades and I've actually been reading a novel. So
I've gone through different ways of reading my comics when I started before working at Marvel. When I worked at the comic book shop and I had a long trip between college and home, I would get my new books on Wednesday, read them on the train. I'm sorry, on the bus. I would just go through them. I put them in the order that I wanted to read them in because everyone has an order. And I read them in that order. Then I get home and then I pick which ones I want to read again because maybe I just went through it real quick and then read it. And then, like you said, you live with them.
Yeah.
So I would read it cover to cover. Got to the point where I even started reading like the letters page for a little while, or even reading the house ads just to see, what was coming out and stuff like that. And again, back then I was really devouring the books.
Right.
Then when I started working at Marvel, I got to see the books in so many different ways because I would get black and white copies of the books. I was part of the sign-off.
Right.
So a copy would be dropped off to me because I would be sending it to the comics code. So since I had it, I signed it off that I received it. I would read through it and then send it out. Then about the same week, we would get the comic books themselves. Like everyone else at Marvel, the moment the bundles came out, everything stopped and we would be flipping through it real quick. So I would flip through the books. At lunchtime, I would read through them and then, of course, take them home. And since I was getting books for free, I took everything home.
Right.
In my weird way, I thought I should read them all. Marvel and DC. Mainly because, this artist is now working at DC. I have artwork. I could call up DC and get their contact information. So me and the DC comic book, the art returns guy, we would share our lists back and forth. It was just easier that way than actually calling editors or what have you. We just shared the physical list with each other. It just made so much sense and it was a lot quicker. And then I would get the artwork and I would look at the artwork and kind of read the book again, just with the art. So by the time the book got put away, not that it ever got put away, but by the time the book went into a box, I had read it in some form or another 3 or 4 times. Not only would I have read maybe the physical artwork, and back then they had the balloons on it.
Yeah.
Or I would be just studying the art, and then also the color guides.
Yeah.
So there was at least multiple times that this book would pass my eyes before it got put into a box. Because once I started working at Marvel and I got all the books for free, I stopped bag and boarding because it was just too expensive.
Yeah.
I just started putting them in the actual diamond boxes that they came in. So when I was going through my collection of stuff, I would open a box and that would be whatever came out maybe for the 3 months of whatever date. Kind of a thing.
Being an indie guy, I didn't take much home from Marvel, but I went to the comic shop every week and got my indie book.
And even though I was getting the books for free, I would still go to the comic shop and drop a good amount of money because I was getting the indie books.
Me
or
too.
I was
That's what I would do.
Getting books that wasn't part of the program. So
and I specifically didn't want to turn into one of those people at Marvel who I saw so many of, who got jaded by getting books for free. So therefore either didn't want to read any books that weren't free or didn't want to read any comics at all because they were surrounded by them all the time. I'm like, I do not want to be that guy.
I kept devouring it. I started as a Marvel zombie, And then I started buying DC because I bought all the Marvels. And eventually I was getting everything, just about. And it's like I still needed more. And that's where the indies came in. That's where the black and white books came in the 80s. I know I picked up Boris the Bear, a few Ninja Turtles, not the very first ones, of course.
I missed out on the first ones too.
Yeah, just a group afterwards. And eventually I dropped those off as well. Because you get to a point where it's like, do I like this? Or is it, I was a very early adopter to manga. The Psychic Girl.
Oh, yeah, I got
one
those.
of the books I bought all
Kamui.
the time. That one, no. That one I don't think I read.
I got Kamui. That was the other. Mai and Kamui both came out from First, I think it was.
I think it was First Comics. I think, or was it early Viz?
My issues of Mai are in France now.
Really?
I sold them on eBay to somebody in France.
Okay.
Just like 5 years ago. So I hadn't read them in years and years and years. Let's see if somebody on eBay wants these.
Yeah, exactly. So, and again, it's just how I would consume them, how I would read them. Then after I leave Marvel, now I'm buying the books. That's when I start getting picky, because you get spoiled real quick when they're free.
Oh yeah.
You didn't care what you were reading. When you're paying for it yourself, then you get really picky. It's like, okay, I need to really figure out what is it that I want. And
especially nowadays.
Yeah. But back then, the comic shop that I went to was huge. They had a playroom, and they had multiple owners. So one of the part owners would close up the shop, and me and my friends would hang out, play video games, and we would actually start recording podcasts in this space. And I would read the books pretty quickly. I would just zim through it to see what was going on, because I'm pretty sure I wouldn't actually sit down and read it until the weekend. And then eventually when that shop closed, I just stopped buying books altogether. And then when I do buy books, maybe I read them on the train on the way home, or they end up in a stack, closed, and I haven't opened them yet.
Oh, boy.
Midtown.
You got to get to reading.
I got to get to reading, because I would go into a shop. I always had this habit of, no matter what shop it was, especially if I discover it for the first time, I will buy something there.
Right.
I'll figure out what to get, just because I'm in the place. I'm in the shop.
Right.
Even if it's a new shop, I'll buy a book to either try, or I'll get a book that I normally would have got anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But now I don't read enough. The only times I read books is while I'm lettering them, so I know the story that's going on. Sometimes if it's a new book, I'll read the previous book. If I wasn't the one lettering that, so I'll get an idea of what it looks like and stuff like that. And that's why I do like the idea of Comixology, is I could go and get something if I needed it for reference and stuff like that. And it looks nice on an iPad. It looks okay. It looks good on a computer screen, but I won't look at it on the phone, because even with the guided view,
too small.
Experience isn't right. It's just too small.
Well, Jeff D here was talking about, he says he's also enjoying the different variants. That's of What's the Furthest Place from Here? I don't know if you've read that one. It's a good indie book from Image right now. But I haven't seen all the different. That's one of those books now that there was a lot of them at my. What always happens at mine and probably everybody's local comic shop is that first issue, a lot of copies of. Second issue, bunch of copies of. Maybe all the different covers. Now that we're on to the fifth or sixth issue, if there's a shelf copy, it's a surprise. An indie book. It's like, I get it on my pull list, of course. It's like by the fifth or sixth issue, it's all pull list customers, and they don't have all those variant covers anymore. Let's see. Mine the Comics, he can only find the mood 2 days a week or so. Here is what I do, because I can understand that. But here is how you take advantage of the mood. This is what I have my comic book reading chair is right back there. And right over there I have a magazine holder that my to be read pile is in. That's number one. You have to have your comics next to your reading chair. And then what I did was, here is, I got out 2 more magazines. And if you notice, these These are from when Marvel was cleaning out. They
I have a set of those as well.
Star Comics Care Bears on it. So any trades or books I'm reading, I stick in here and put it next to my chair in front of the end table, so that they're at and not only when they're not here, I not only have to be in the mood to read them, I have to be in the mood to get up and go find them. Instead, what I do is I decide what I'm like, I want to read that. And I put it there so that when I'm in the mood for something, I can just pull it out. That because that's how I take advantage of me, because that's what happens. Sometimes if you can only find the mood 2 days a week or so, that's not only finding the mood, that's finding the mood to go up, find something to read, pull it off out of your box and shelf and sit down and read that. I split that up into two different things. If I go, what do I feel like reading sometime in the next month? And I go and pull it out and I put it in the magazine thing, and it just sits there until I'm sitting there one day and I'm like, maybe I'll pick this up and read it. It makes it easier to be in the mood to read in general.
Yeah, I can totally understand that.
That's my habit, yeah. I almost bought Luba an hour ago at my shop. Jim Mahfood's Stone Ghost issues ate up my budget. I agree. I like 5 small stores and picking them up weekly and living with comics for a month. Yeah, definitely. Sleepy's here. Some good evenings to people. 62 Lefty Blues is here. Anyone else pick up Mignola Hellboy Artisan Edition? I think it came out last week. I did not pick that up. I don't have much Hellboy or Mignola. Oddly, he's one of those guys who I love his illustrations, his covers, but I'm not as fond of his panel-to-panel cartooning. Not that I dislike it or anything, but he just never grabbed me. But I love his covers.
I do enjoy his artwork. I haven't picked up any of the artist edition. I actually don't think I own any artist edition, really.
Well, the Artisan editions are the smaller ones.
Oh, are they? Okay.
Yeah, they're smaller and cheaper. They're about $40, and they're like this size. They're trade paperback size, I think.
Okay.
So they're putting out a lot of stuff in a more affordable edition like that.
Okay, that'd be good, because I always wanted, especially the Ramita Spider-Man stuff when it came out, and I wanted all the Marvel ones that came out, but they were just not happening at all, and they're beautiful. Mignola, I love his art. I actually own a piece of Mignola art that's about this big. And what it is, it's on like a Post-it note of Hellboy's head. Now, what happened was I forget which artist I was having a conversation with. And this is back when I was at Marvel. And I had made sure that a package got to him by a certain time because he needed it for a Comic-Con or something. So I made sure that the artwork was already split and it was on its way. And I made sure that, it got out as early as possible. So he sent me a thank you note, and in it was this little doodle of Hellboy's head. And he wrote back, it's like, this is something that Mike Mignola gave me at a con. We were sitting next to each other, and I figured I'll send it to you as a thank you. So there's no proof that this is really, except for the thing. But and I have to find it. I have many little thank you notes with sketches on them.
Right.
I have a Wolverine from Chris Pachalo. I have a Cyclops from Gene Ha, because people would send their work in, their lettering.
It's good to keep on the good side of the art returns guy.
Exactly. So when you were showing off the project that you're doing, your book, I was thinking I should do that. I should get them all together and put them back, because right now I have them all in a regular binder. In one of those little 8.5 by 11 portfolios where you usually show off your artwork. So I have it in there just because it was someplace to put it. But I do have a page with all these one little stickies and stuff like that, notes on there that have these quick sketches. And it's like, I always thought, well, maybe what I should do for the Mignola piece is find one of those really gaudy frames that they use when you go to the museum, 5-inch thick, gilded frames. I was thinking of finding the tiniest one just to put it in that frame and put it up in the studio because it's just so. It's just a gaudy idea that I may have to still do that.
But Mike and Mignola, it's strange to me how much I love his covers, but I'm kind of disinterested in his interior. That almost never happens to me with an artist. Usually, if I like their covers, I like their and vice versa. And it's not like I dislike his interior work. It's just kind of like, it's good, but it doesn't really grab me. Maybe it's just. It also could just be because he's never done I've never been a Hellboy fan.
Okay.
And the stuff he did for Marvel, or whoever, I'm not really that big Marvel or DC fan. So maybe if he did something that was more up my alley story-wise, I'd like his interior art better. But he just hasn't because it's just not my taste. But like I said, I
Right.
love his covers.
Yeah, I do enjoy his artwork. I do like the interiors, and I did follow some of his superhero stuff. I know
Yeah.
he did there was a crossover that he did, and right now, for the life of me, I can't remember the name, but one of the best panels in it is that they were trying to stop a bomb, and they sent a Green Lantern in to stop it. It was Odyssey, and the guy painted the bomb yellow. He was standing there with a paintbrush, and there's this great image. And it was like Mignola did it, and it was like, that was cool. And the bomb goes off and it destroys, I think, a whole planet. A lot of guilt to the John Stewart Green Lantern. But what I think I like about his artwork is because it reminds me of Alex Toth a bit, where it's that clean, that one that once the line is down, it's down, and the coloring helps a lot with it. And I'm wondering if that is the covers, he gets to maybe spend more time doing it than the interiors.
I think he does spend more time, and I think when you compare him to Alex Toth, I understand the comparison, but I don't think it's entirely apt in that Toth started out Toth was one of these guys who figured out what he can leave out.
Mhm.
And it took him years and years and years to figure out what he can leave out. I don't think Mignola ever really did that. He just came up with a style that kind of simplified things. So it's kind of different to my eye. I mean, I'm sure Mignola loves Alex Toth. I'm sure he wouldn't mind me saying he's not as good as Alex Toth because he'd probably say that, you know. But I think sometimes his is more about style than it is about reduction. But he does really good. His style really does reduce things, and he's really good at it. I'm not trying to say he's not good at it, but I just don't think because it's a style, he doesn't always come up with the same with the right. So it's first of all, it's really tough to simplify things like that. For those of you who don't know out there, making something complicated is much easier than making it simple. Because if you're looking for just the right lines to make something simple and you get it wrong, it's obvious.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that Mignola came up with that style before he had the talent for it. And he got better and better and better as the years went by. And the covers that he spends more time on are his best stuff because he has the time to figure out how to simplify stuff that much. But I think since Toth's came through pure drawing, his style came out of pure drawing sort of when he was 20 years in, he didn't even think about style. It was just he knows how to draw to streamline everything down, and it's kind of just artist talk. I don't think it matters at all to the comic book reader.
Mhm.
But that's just kind of my take on it. I just think with but I haven't seen Mignola in a while. I have to say, like I said, I don't want to put down Mignola at all because he's very good and he's good at simplifying things. I just don't think he's as good as Toth. And I think the reason he's not as good as Toth is because he chose a different type of drawing. That's all. It's just kind of one of those weird artist things. So.
Right.
Yeah. See, currently I live out my childhood dream of having as many comics as I can possibly read, which ironically means I don't read them the way I did when I had a shortage. Exactly. I mean, if Sleepy Reader has he does a weekly countdown of the comics he bought. And he's been having the trouble lately that he's been buying more comics than because like he likes to get his weekly countdown in before the next week comes. I mean, I do a little review of all my comics on this show every week, but I don't get that many, and if I have 10 that I have to read before Friday, that's a lot, but I can usually get 10, but usually 4 is no problem. But if I would get 12 to 15 every week, that'd be a lot of comics to read, and then next week pick up another 10, and the next week another 10, and the next week I would never be able to read them all twice. Tempting. Oh, that's the Mike Mignola Artisan Edition. It's an education in splotting blacks. Yes, Mignola is very good at that. It's a master of the comic book class. Yeah, he definitely is that. But I don't. Like I said, simplifying things is not what the fans love, and it's really hard. So I don't think a lot of modern, even Oming, he's another. I don't know if he's a disciple of Mignola as much as he's a disciple of who is that? The Batman Beyond guy, Bruce Timm.
Okay.
Bruce Timm. Not related question. How old is the youngest person you talk to about comics? Do you see kids going to the LECs and joining the talk? No, almost never. I would say the youngest people I talk with, occasionally there are, I would say on 10 times a year, I see kids there that I talk to about comics. And maybe once a year, I'll see a teenager who's just getting into comics and recommend stuff. I'll occasionally see 20-year-olds in there who are new to comics, but mostly it's us old grizzled folks.
Mm-hmm.
There's like 7 in vinyls included for some of them. Oh, and the 7-inch vinyls. I was trying to order that. He's talking about the first issue of What's the Furthest Place from Here was going to have a soundtrack and have a 7-inch vinyl record in with it. I think it was like $15.
Oh, okay.
The problem, and I was actually going to pre-order one just for the novelty of it.
Mm-hmm.
But every week, my comic shop owner sends me an email with final order cutoff in it, which is the last time where you just click on what you want and he orders it for you. That's the last time. But that one wasn't in there. I was like, oh, I guess it's not in there. I guess they're not coming out with it, whatever. Boom. So I ordered the regular one. And then he was telling me when the regular one came out, what happened with the 7-inch vinyl ones is that I guess due to they had to get the print run of the vinyl before they had final order cutoff.
Okay.
So I don't know what the print run of the vinyl was, maybe 2,000. But then the final order cutoff was like orders for it were like 4,000. So they just couldn't fulfill a bunch of the orders because they didn't have the vinyl.
Right. It makes sense because knowing printing and dates and you have to order a certain amount, you don't even know if people would want vinyl.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's a tough one. That's
Yeah.
a tough one to make the decision.
So a lot like I wasn't able to get one just because they were all sold out before even final order cutoff came around. King Spoed in the house. I picked my comics up today, and there was a young lady and her sister who were in their early teens. Then a guy came through with his son who was around 10, and the boy was looking through. Okay. My comic shop is also pretty small. So I imagine if it was bigger, there'd be more kids going through. I have 2 volumes of Golden Age Wonder Woman with the S&M writing. Been sitting in my I had, once again, I got them from Marvel in the early 90s. the Golden Age Wonder Woman stuff, sitting on my shelf for maybe 15, 20 years unread. Just because I never, and I was always of the mind that people always said, oh, the bondage in Golden Age Wonder Woman. I was always like, they're reading into it. I mean, you've seen people read into stuff that's, I'm always like, is that really there? I finally got around to reading them. Holy cow. There really is bondage all over them. It's crazy. At the drop of a hat, Wonder Woman's getting tied up. And that's someone else is getting. I mean, it was like, I'm like, they're not. No one was kidding about the bondage in Golden Age Wonder Woman.
That's how she loses her powers. So she had to get bonded at every issue.
But what's his name? The Wonder Woman artist, Peter. Something Peter. I can't. I'm thinking. It's like H.G. Peter or something. I'm getting his name confused with H.R. Giger. But he's got some. But I think he's one of the like unsung artistic heroes of comic books, because those are really well drawn. Those Wonder Womans, they are. Those Golden Age Wonder Womans are really, really nice looking, and he just doesn't get mentioned a lot as a sort of A-level Golden Age artist, and he was H.R. Peter. Oh God, I wish I could remember.
I don't know. I'll look it up.
I find it easier to read comics these days and have trouble getting in the mood to watch TV. No longer understand how people sit and watch for hours every day. I usually watch 2 hours of TV a night. I go to bed at 11. At 9 o'clock, I sit down, relax, watch a little TV for maybe an hour and a half, and then I'm relaxed enough to go to bed. Otherwise, the rest of the day, I'm reading comics. I read comics in the morning, too. Sometimes I have an hour in the morning before I get to work and I read comics. Love the Mignola. IDW had Spider-Man Gil Kane Artist Edition and the new previews. All those Artist Editions are so terrific. Slave, I'm sure you watch YouTube comic videos way more than TV. Yeah, I have YouTube comic videos on as I work in the background. Good evening, Comic Crack. How about the Amazing Screwhead, Jenny Finn? I enjoy Mignola when I read him. I just don't get that much of him. Just my pull list, sitting down to read Shaolin Cowboy first. It's a good one. That's in my stuff. Cleaning the kitchen at the same time. Listen to YouTube videos. YouTube comic videos are one of my main. Mignola's one of those artists I follow because I like his art, but I also like him. He seems like, so I've heard he's a nice guy. And he retired and then unretired. Mignola likes to draw strange shapes. He's a huge Frazetta fan. Okay. I'm a barbarian. I'd rather read a Mignola comic than a Toth. Well, the problem with Toth comics is most of them aren't worth reading.
Unfortunately not.
I mean, he's never had any good writers. Mm-hmm. The art is brilliant, and his drawing is brilliant, and his storytelling is brilliant, but
I don't want to read about Hot Wheels cars. I love Hot Wheel cars. I don't want to read the comic book.
If you were to ask me my favorite comic book artist, Toth would be in the top 10. If you were to ask me my favorite comic books, I don't know if a Toth comic would show up in the top 200. That's the weird thing about Alex Toth. And like I said, he did. I've got a book full of his 50s romance comics that I look through all the time. I mean, they're so nicely drawn and absolutely gorgeous, but they're 50s romance comics. Who wants to read those? I mean, right there. Yeah, that's just, I prefer style to perfection. That could be it. Who knows? Hell, it could just be that there aren't really any good Alex Toth. There are more good Mike. I would rather read a Mike Mignola comic than an Alex Toth comic. But I would rather look at an Alex Toth comic than a Mike Mignola comic. Nice experience picking my books tonight. 2 different moms in the shop with their kids buying comics and Pokemon cards. Guessing they were around 10 years old. That's good. Yeah, my shop doesn't have any Pokemon cards, so No, shop on a Saturday. I see kids and young women. Yeah, no, I'm there on Wednesday afternoons these days, so there's not going to be a lot of kids there. Yes, that's the he's talking about the Wonder Woman. Did you look up his name? H.R. Peter?
I couldn't find it. One of the databases I'm looking at.
H.G. Peter. There we go.
Okay.
H.G. Peter. I always confuse his name with H.R. Giger because they're similar, and even though I know the alien guy didn't draw Wonder Woman, and like I said, H.G. Peter should be. H.G. Peter isn't even a household name to comic book fans, and he should be.
If you said that name to me, I would not have known.
What it was he started drawing Wonder Woman when he was like in his late 50s. He was already a sort of well-established commercial artist kind of thing. So he died at the end of the Golden Age, I think it was. So he
1958.
58 he died?
Yeah.
Yeah, so beginning of the Silver Age. So he wasn't around but besides drawing Wonder Woman for that, he didn't go on and do other things, but his art is terrific. He really is one of the A-level talents of the Golden Age. Rain Like Hammers. I want to read. Matter of fact, I got to pull those out to reread them. I have to put them in my to be read pile because I want to read that one again. That was a brilliant book. Came out. Have you ever heard of? Have you ever heard of Brandon Graham Wilson?
No, I have not.
This is the first. Well, I've read a couple things by him, but this is the first thing I've read through and through. He put out a book last year called Rain Like Hammers, this weird sort of sci-fi book that was just, I loved it. It was just terrific. Lobster Johnson for the win. All right. Have you read any Red Room? I read the first issue of Red Room, and it just wasn't for me. And I'm just not that into torture horror stuff. I was just like,
Horror is so hard for me in comic books because there's no big surprise. You go to see it on the page. When you turn the page, I've been creeped out by books. Some of the old EC books can creep you out, but as far as horror, I don't think I've ever was like into the horror books.
This was more along the lines of what do they call it? Torture horror or whatever.
No, I'm not into that at all.
Hostile sort of stuff.
Right. I don't even watch those movies. That's not.
Ed Piscor did wonderfully drawn. But I was just like, I just didn't care. Mm-hmm. That's all it was about Red Room. I mean, I thought it was well done. It's just it wasn't my thing. Top 10 artists from you, Jared. I just don't like lists, but I'll think about it. I have a Giger Dead Kennedy penis landscape poster from the first printing of the LP. I didn't know there was such a thing. Yes, Soul Rain is a big favorite of mine. Yeah, terrific. One of my shops was giving away some Spawn comics, and I thought out I still pick it up. $2.99 justification. I picked up Spawn, and still will because it's 0.0. Yeah. Like I said, that's the only reason I pick it. It's not my. If it was a $4 comic, I wouldn't pick it up. But since it's a $3 comic, I'm picking it up. I loved Hip Hop Family Tree and X-Men Grand Design, but Red Room is just not it. Yeah, Hip Hop Family Tree I enjoyed a lot. X-Men Grand Design, once again, not my thing, but well done. Have you seen those Grand Design books?
No, Wilson? I have not. Are they specialty books now, or?
Well, it's Marvel's actually publishing them. Ed Piscor, I think, did the first one, X-Men Grand Design. And what it is he's telling you the history of the X-Men as a sort of a comic. So but it's not like I would actually prefer the history of the comics. But like the history, like his history of the X-Men is in continuity with the comic. So like it starts with Mr. Sinister back in ancient Egypt or something. And then goes through everything as it supposedly happened in order, like with all the retcons kind of in there.
They're like an updated Marvel saga?
Sort of like that, yeah.
Okay.
And they did, Ed Piscor did X-Men Grand Design. Jim Rugg, I think, is doing Hulk Grand Design right now. And someone else did a Fantastic Four Grand Design. and also, being an insider, we know there was no grand design. Just ended up that way. So,
Yeah, very true. I will probably pick up the Spider-Man grand design. It's his 60th anniversary this year, so that'll probably be the next one.
Everyone liked what was that Spider-Man one? I can't remember the name of it, but there was a Spider-Man decade by decade book that everyone seemed to like. I did not
There was
read
like
it.
that Life in Time. Oh no, I know the one you're talking about, which I didn't pick up, but I know which one you're talking about. Let's see.
Definitely different from his other stuff. Yeah, the Red Room, definitely. There was a big obscenity trial about the Postus and the Giger art. I did not know that. I pick up Ed's stuff and Jim's stuff because of their channel, but I can't bring myself to get Red Room. After the last 2 years, I need comics to inspire me, make me happy, not shock and depressed. Yeah, that was a shocking and depressing book. Yeah, I have to say, Ed Piskor and Jim Rugg have done a terrific job getting people being likable on their channel and getting people to buy their stuff. Have you seen their channel at all, Wilson? Cartoonist Kayfabe, Ed Piskor and Jim Rugg do a channel where they mostly look at comics and interview people.
I don't know if I've come across them yet. I have to look them up.
Kayfabe is a wrestling term. It means the sort of the show they put on for people, even though people know it's not real. Everyone pretends it's real.
Okay.
And cartoonist kayfabe is them putting on a show for you, but also giving you a look behind the kayfabe and what goes on in comics.
All right, cool. I'll look that one up.
So I look at them. I took them off my subscription list just because they take too many. They post too many videos. They were like flooding my subscription list. So I check on them every now and then. The game is to turn random stories into a grand design retroactively. Yeah, that's what the X-Men, all the grand designs is. Yeah, Red Room is definitely pretty depressing, but I picked up issue 3 and it's definitely Black Mirror vibe. So yeah, they're on volume 2 of Red Room also. Kayfabe is the channel that got me producing comics. Oh, that's cool. That's good. Yeah, because they like a lot of what they call 80s outlaw comics that they went back and looked at. Just the real small press stuff from the 80s. That was, yeah, they're big wrestling fans. They managed to, like I said, they managed to get pretty popular pretty quickly by tapping into what's popular with comic fans and doing a good job with it. Their channels, yours, and Comic Tropes are the highlights of comic YouTube. I'm glad you like mine.
I do watch Comic Tropes every once in a while.
Yeah, I catch that every now and then.
Was the book called Spider-Man Life Story?
That's it.
Chip Zdarsky and Mark Bagley.
Okay. And each issue is a decade. It's as if Spider-Man appeared in the 60s as a teenager and grew older. So each issue is a different decade with Spider-Man being 10 years older.
Okay.
So once again, it's like John Updike. I haven't read it. John Updike's Rabbit series. Each issue.
That I have not read.
Have you read the Shaolin Cowboy at all?
I know of the Shaolin Cowboy, and I bought, I'm pretty sure, the early book that came out years ago, because I think this is a second run.
Yeah, this. He does his he has I think 3 or 4 of them now, series of graphic. Now I can't remember what, but this one is Shaolin Cowboy, Cruel to be Kin, #1. So first they put him out as issues and then as sort of a graphic novel. I haven't bought any of his stuff in a little while, so I decided to go with it. And this is one of his wordier ones, I have to say. I really enjoyed it because in this issue we get mostly the story of this, I think it's a monitor lizard. They're the biggest lizards in the world.
Not a kimono?
No, I think a kimono dragon's different than a monitor lizard. This could be a kimono. This could be. It's either a kimono dragon or a monitor lizard. I can't
Okay.
remember which one.
Mhm.
But they can talk, and the world is. He lives in like this weird sci-fi world. So there's these two monitor lizards walking around the city, talking to each other, and I guess they clean up carrion around the city. They eat dead things.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden, the one monitor lizard is like, "Holy cow!" And he's the other monitor lizard's younger than him. He's like, "Holy cow! I think that's the Shaolin Cowboy over there." He's like, "What? Who? That guy you're always talking about?" Then the older monitor lizard goes and tells a story of his youth, of how the older monitor lizard was first out of his shell, his father came to eat him, which is, I guess, what happens to these lizards. And so then the rest of most issues of the Shaolin Cowboy are fight scenes. So then the rest of the issue, we get a fight scene between Shaolin Cowboy and this big father monitor lizard in the desert as the little tiny lizard watches and tries to live. And then the little tiny lizard who is like, "Can I come with you?" And Shaolin Cowboy's like, whatever. And then all of a sudden we get this guy who's riding a giant jellyfish with a pterodactyl, and they attack the Shaolin Cowboys. And then we get a fight between them, and it's just like this and this is all in hindsight. So this is all the monitor lizard telling the younger monitor lizard this story when he sees the Shaolin Cowboy in the city, and it's just terrifically done. Like I said, this one actually has more dialogue in it than some of the stuff I've seen, but the writing is good. The art is, of course, terrific. And
That's
the fighting
Georgia
scenes are
Sparrow.
really good. Let's see. I'm so happy the 2099 Omni is coming out. Oh, okay. We were just discussing. Do you like the omnibuses? Do you have many of them?
I only have a Captain America one that I won in a comic shop, and I wanted the Spider-Man one.
Ah.
I ended up getting the Captain America one, so I never broke it open. Because I
Okay.
wanted the Spider-Man one. So I think, oh, maybe I'll just resell this eventually. So that's the
Yeah.
only one I have. It's wonderful to have a tome that big,
Right.
but again, at what
It's
point,
hard to read.
yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, do I really lug it out? Am I going to enjoy it?
Fun to have it all in one place, but they're tough to read.
Mhm.
I've bought and sold a lot of omnibuses over the last 10 years. Because it's like, I need some money. Oh, this omnibus is worth $150 now. Someone else can have it.
Exactly. I'd rather read the Marvel Masterworks.
Yeah. I like the oversize. I like the size of it, but I like the Ultimate collections from Image, which are about 12 issues.
Mhm.
That's a good size for me. Kayfabe does a great job of breaking comics up into the great things going on there. Yeah, they do. They do a good job of presenting stuff. And their chatter back and forth is good. Spidey 29 was one of my favorites, and I can't wait to read the entire story. Yeah, everybody says that's the best. I didn't read a lot of it, but it was
That was the best 2099.
Leonardi drew a lot of it, right?
Leonardi started it, yes.
And Busiek, did he write it?
I want to say yes. I'm not positive.
Yeah, that's some
But
talent.
that was the best one out of the rest of them, because that one felt like it had a true story. All the other ones were like, let's put something together. That's what it felt like. That it's like, we just slap the 2099 label on it and go from there.
Right.
You know, the Hulk was interesting that it was this guy investigating, he was a reporter, investigating the Hulk being worshipped as a god. And these people were trying to create a new Hulk. And this guy basically fell into the vat of it, if I remember correctly.
Peter David was Spidey 2099, by the way.
Oh, was it Peter David?
Peter David. Yeah, I knew it was a good writer on it. I knew they had a good writer, but I can't remember which one.
So, but that's the only one that really stood out. That's the only one that survived.
Yeah.
You know, the X-Men 2099, that was Ron Lim drawing it. I don't know who was writing it.
Friar Tuck thought Doom 2099 was decent.
Doom 2099 wasn't bad because again, being part of Marvel at the time, the push for that Emperor Doom storyline was actually pretty good. You know, we gave out buttons, we did posters, and it was an all right story. But I'm seeing it through the other side, and not seeing it as a fan, but seeing it as somebody who likes the idea of putting out things like posters and pins. And, you know, they were like they were campaign posters and stuff like that made. So that was fun in that aspect.
And what, besides what I said, this individual Shaolin Cowboy was about, I describe it as really well drawn Zen fight scenes. That's what it is. It's like Jeff Darrow obviously likes drawing the hell. He's no Alex Toth. He likes
Not
to put
at all.
lots of
Jeff
squiggles everywhere, but he's really good at drawing.
All in them.
He's really good at drawing, though, so it's fun. It's not just cross hatching. None of my shops had Shaolin Cowboy, so I picked up his Star Trek book. I've been watching his comic tracks with Ed and Jim on Akira and stuff. Again, seems like a really nice guy. Okay, I've never seen him on anything. Yeah, Shaolin. I think if I hadn't have put this on my pull list, I wouldn't have. My comic shop, I don't think, ordered shelf copies of it. Figure out what books went in what sequence and hope they're all self-contained. Like Shaolin Cowboy, you can pick up anything of, and it's all. Could Alex Toth draw Shaolin Cowboy? He could, but it would be very, very different. He could draw the hell out of anything. I have to pick. Yeah, Shaolin Cowboy is fun. Yeah, Peter David, Doom 2099. Doom was pretty much the vocal point of 2099. Focal point? Okay. X-Men took 25 issues to get good, apparently. Yep, made Doom president. That's what it did.
But I said Emperor Doom. It was President Doom.
President
Emperor Doom was another book.
Emperor Doom was the graphic novel from the late 80s, right?
Yes. Yes.
You know what's weird? I got I forget which one. I didn't get the issues of. I decided to get the hardcover of Shaolin Cowboy from what is it? Dark Horse put it out, and it was fun. You know, the printing and everything was fine, but the book itself was. Now I know most hardcover books are actually cardboard underneath the hardcover, but this was literal cardboard with like no coating on it, no nothing. It was like, and it was curved. Even it wasn't. I was like, this must be the cheapest. Well, not, it wasn't corrugated cardboard, at least. I was like, this must have been the cheapest cardboard they could find because the whole book was curved because the cardboard. Yeah, my shop didn't get any copies of Shaolin, even though it has been my pull list for years. Wow. You got to remind them. They don't have a good look. It's Chris Geruso. Good evening. Top of Chris's head.
The top of my head. Hey, what's going on, guys? It's me, the top of my head.
Chris's ceiling.
How are you doing, Chris?
Oh, man, the top of my head's great. How are you?
Doing all right?
Oh, my God. Best week for the top of my head.
The top of his head is... Oh, look at that. He's working on some... No, those are his masks over there. How many pages do you have done? You almost at the end?
I'm starting to see the finish line in the distance.
All right. What page number are you finishing coloring?
I'm on 177 right now.
All right. 230 is your ending?
236.
236 is his ending. He's getting there. Slowly but surely. Here's something I found on my shelf this week that I'm going to have to show you guys. This is Marvel Comics Presents issue number 174, the penultimate issue. Second to last. And why do I have this on my shelf, you ask? I forgot I had done this. Because on the back of this is a picture of George Russo's.
Oh, okay.
And I posted this on Facebook a while ago, a couple years ago, I think, because I had forgotten about it already. And this is George Roussos at work. So what do we have down there? He's working on coloring something. So, of course, all of us Marvel sleuths on Facebook had to try to figure out what page he was coloring there, because everybody was like, well, what is that?
Right.
So eventually figured out it was from this book. It's page 7, Cross Time Critters Splash. So let me open it up, page 7. And what made it hard to find, oh, this is when it was a flip book, was that he didn't actually color. There we go. Cross Time Critters Splash. He didn't actually color the issue. Where is it? What is this? This is between TechNet, Excalibur. Ashley Pozzella colored it. But we were guessing that sometimes since it's got a logo on it and first page, sometimes like the splash page, if it had like display logo on it or something, wasn't done till later. So he may have just been coloring that logo or something, because he obviously didn't color the whole issue because Ashley did. So it's like that's probably why it was a splash page, because he was coloring either the credits or this Cross Time Critters thing. So I was like, I'd forgotten I did, like I said, and I had printed this out just to keep it in the bag with the comic, so I'd remember why I had this comic, because otherwise I wouldn't remember.
Uh-huh.
I found it on my shelf yesterday and was like, oh, cool, look at that. Oh, look at that. I even put in I didn't realize that was there until I took it out. I even put in a blow up of the page itself he was working on.
Oh, okay.
So this is page 7 from this comic. I find myself having to do those things when I'm like, oh, I got a picture with this comic book page in it. Now I have to figure out what it is. What was on Chris's screen? I think I have one picture with Chris working on something that was on his screen that I had to go figure out what it was. Hey, Paulo's here.
Hey, guys.
Good evening, Paulo.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, Paulo.
I got to tell Paulo this story just because he loves. I found this issue on my shelf.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, this is Marvel Comics Presents 174.
Mm-hmm.
Second to last issue. And I said, why do I have that there? But luckily, I had put in the back, I have this picture I took of George Roussos.
Yeah.
And he's coloring something. And we figured out on Facebook a few years ago that what he was coloring was page 7 of this book, The Cross Time Caper. There's a close-up of the page. So it was like, I just found this. There we go. It's I just found this week. I'm like, I am glad I put this photo in the back of the comic, because otherwise I wouldn't realize why I had this.
Yeah, Excalibur.
The Cross Time Critters. And he was probably just coloring the logo, because somebody else colored the whole issue. But that would happen sometimes in those days. If the editor, especially I think for Marvel Comics Presents, because often these stories, because this was a weekly comic, so these stories had to be done well ahead of time. So sometimes they'd get them done well ahead of, so they'd be lettered and whatever, and then later on they'd put in like this Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., and what is that? Breakthrough. Like that Nick Fury was out of the logo cabinet. So probably some paste up guy put that on after the coloring. Sometimes it gets on after the lettering is done. and after the coloring is done. So George would have to color just the logo. That's on the splash page of some of these Marvel Comics Presents. So that's what he was probably doing, coloring just the logo of the splash. What we had to do before computers were around. We need just this logo colored. Oh, now I've got Lunatic on the front. This is a flip book. Ravaged 2099. That's the real star. Made me want to buy a garbage truck as a battle van as a preteen. Someone was just mentioning there's a Spider-Man 2099 omnibus coming out. So we were talking a little 2099. Ravaged. Wasn't that the one that Stan Lee supposedly created for them?
Yeah.
Supposedly. We're not sure if he did.
Well, Paul Ryan's art kind of helped selling it. Otherwise,
yeah.
But then Pat Mills takes over and tries to turn into some dystopian science fiction, even more dystopian science fiction stuff. And then the Joe Bennett starts working on it. The Ravage was Joe Bennett's first work in the United States.
Oh, okay. Makes me Smartlock makes me sad to think Jeff Darrow art won't sell. Yeah, and it's like put him on you would think a book like that would sell a ton. I'm sure they'll be able to reorder it for you. Yeah, they should be. Dark Horse stuff you can usually reorder. What book was I just surprised sold 100,000 copies? I'm gonna have to think of that. I was reading something today. I can't remember. Oh, it was Jimmy Corrigan, the smartest boy on earth.
Oh boy.
Sold 100,000 copies.
Okay.
Whoa. I'm sure that's over time, but still, it's a freaking lot of copies. And this, I think what I was reading was years old too. I was like, wow, I didn't realize it sold that well. I had no idea. What happened was Stan Lee saw Escape from New York and boom, a new original Ravage character.
Well, yeah, I can see the resemblance to Kurt Russell.
Did you ever read any Shaolin Cowboy, Paulo?
No. It's not something that ever attracted me, although I do like Jeff Darrow.
It's fun. If you like Zen fight scenes, it's fun. Oh, and I finished off my Luba with 3 daughters, and had some folded. It was a used library copy too, and had some folded down pages on it. I had to weight it down to get them in order again. I also had to. It's a library copy, which is okay. It was $8. They said it was a library copy. I'm fine with that, but none of these stickers and tape that are put, none of this library stuff is meant to come off. Even with good old Bestine, I usually don't bother taking the library stickers off. Well, there was like one right in the front here. I'm like, I'm getting that off. And it took me, even with the Bestine, that thing barely wanted to come off. But if you ever want to take stickers off or tape off of comics, this is the stuff you want. Rubber cement thinner. And a brush. Try not to get your fingers in it too much.
It was fairly normal to have comics with stickers here in Portugal because they were all newsstand comics and they were imported from Brazil. So they didn't have Portuguese prices on, and everyone put stickers on them.
Yeah, I can understand that.
And the prices were handwritten.
They should do that in some secondhand comics. Yeah, that's funny. I have nostalgia for stores people only described that I never. Because I like Bob Wyachek tells stories of it. I've heard other New Yorkers tell stories of it, of like the little mom and pop store in the corner where they could get secondhand comics and coverless comics. And I was always like, oh man, that sounds so cool. Because there was like nothing like it. The best thing we had, I can still remember. I think we went, must have been 79 or 80. I was probably about 14. We went on a family vacation out to Yellowstone Park. So we drove from New York to Montana. It takes like a week to drive there. We'd stop at night and stay at hotels and stuff. But we'd also stop at truck stops. Matter of fact, it must have been earlier than 1980. Because it was, what year did John Byrne take over the X-Men? It was probably around X-Men 112, I would guess. Whatever year that came out. It was probably 78. Our second trip was probably 1980. But all the truck stops had comics in them that were about 4 or 5 years old. So I remember that's where I got my copy of like X-Men 100. I remember. And they had like 10 copies of it there. I should have bought them all. But like every truck stop we would stop at, I'd like run around looking for where the comics were. And like I said, I don't know where they got them from. They're like anywhere from 3 to 5 years old. I was like, cool. All stuff from just before my time collecting comics. So I was like, that made the trip for me. And then we did it, I think 2 years later. That might have been 1980. And all the comics, there were no comics in truck stops. I was just like so disappointed. I was like, oh, that's what I was looking most forward to, buying comics at truck stops. I'm like, I wonder what distribution network brought comics to truck stops for that brief period. Probably the mob.
And having 5-year-old comics.
Yeah.
I mean, I can see 6 months, 5 years.
I can see it only in that. Yeah, that was. You're right. Because the mob stuff, they sold them out of the back of warehouses, but they could have just stuck them in warehouses too. And because what they use, I imagine, the way you guys know Affidavit Returns in the early 70s and how Paulo and I have talked about it before. I don't know if Wilson and Chris know about this.
I'm aware of some of the history of it.
Well,
I know nothing.
What you used to have to do to for newsstand comics is you buy 20 newsstand comics, you sell 10 of them, and then you rip the covers off the other 10 and send them back to the distributor, and they give you credit for those 10 comics. Then it got to be you didn't rip the cover off, you just ripped the logo off. They kept trying to find cheaper and cheaper ways to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So, which is why, like these stores that I've never been to that I feel nostalgic for, they used to have coverless comics and logoless comics for a nickel or something like that, because they used to not destroy the comics. They'd either sell them on to some mom and pop store, or the mom and pop store would just rip the covers off and sell them in the back for a nickel or whatever. So by the early 70s, there became a system where you don't have to send anything back. You just sign an affidavit that says we sold 10 of these and destroyed 10 of these. So what would happen was the distributors, which were all mobbed up, wouldn't even bother to send the comics out to the shops. They didn't care. They weren't making enough money on it. They'd just sign the affidavit that said we destroyed all these copies and get credit back. And somehow that made them make even, because they didn't have to distribute any of the comics, so they weren't, and just got all their money back with it. It was some crazy system. But there were people like all these what's his name, Robert Bierbaum, and other people found out about this, and they'd go to the distributor and they'd buy 100 they'd buy cases, pardon me. They would buy 500 copies of Conan #1. and then sell them at conventions. And this is like the early 70s. That's why when you hear stuff like Neil Adams' X-Men didn't sell, Jack Kirby's Fourth World didn't sell, other popular stuff that there's plenty of copies of now, but got canceled because it didn't sell. It actually did sell to the guys buying it out of the back of the distribution warehouse and selling it at cons. So it's like Marvel and DC thought it didn't sell, but it actually was selling. It was being stolen and sold. But there's no shortage of Neil Adams' Green Lantern, Neil Adams' X-Men, Jack Kirby's Fourth World. For a comic that didn't sell and got canceled, you can find those issues anywhere. Because as Robert Birnbaum did the math, he was like, all you need is 100 guys buying 1,000 copies out of the back of stores. And he's like, and there were, and that's 100,000 copies right there. And you need 500 guys buying 500 copies, and it's like that's 100,000 right there. He's like, that's how many comics were going missing from the distribution system in the early 70s, the affidavit ones. There was 100,000 copies of the popular stuff leaking out of the back, which is why you guys have read like Overstreet Guide. Did you guys used to look at the Overstreet Guide and like stuff like Conan #3 always like raised up in price and had low distribution next to it? That's because all these guys bought it. It didn't even hit the West Coast because all these West Coast dealers went and got Conan #3, bought cases of them, and were selling them for $1 a piece at Comic Cons. So a comic that cost them $0.25, they could sell for $1 at a Comic Con, and they were making bank. And the warehouses would just swear that the affidavit return, we destroyed those 100 copies. So Marvel and DC were getting their sales figures back and seeing, oh, Jack Kirby's Fourth World isn't selling. But it was. That's like what affidavit returns was, and that maddening age.
It's crazy.
And that made me nostalgic for stores that don't exist, that I never went to.
Yeah. And how do you take your comics? Any way I can.
I remember seeing boxes with coverless comics in like used bookstores.
Yeah, that's where they came from.
Yeah.
That's back when you used to have to tear off the cover and send it.
Yeah, I always knew that was like they were supposed to have been thrown out and everything, but I didn't know all those extra details.
But they still have that now. Like DC, you have to tear off the covers and send them back. Sometimes they make you sign an affidavit. Depends. Something like my comic shop owner, I was talking to him the other day because now there are comics that are returnable, right? Mm-hmm. For certain issues, like most comics at the comic shop are not returnable. If the comic shop orders 20 copies of the latest whatever, they can't return them. But occasionally, if DC or Marvel have a big push, especially DC does this, some of the indies do this too. If they have a big push on with a comic, they'll make them all returnable. So that's when my comic shop will order tons of extra comics, especially so they can get the oh God, the word just flew out of my head. The one in 50s, the one in 100s.
The incentive books.
The incentive books. They also call them I forget what they. So they can get them too. So there might be some Batman comic that he's going to sell a couple hundred copies of, but he'll order 1,000 copies because they're returnable. And then he was talking about some book like that, and John, who works in the shop, goes, yeah, you just have to remember to return them. Because you have to return them at a certain time, too. You have 3 months, and then you return them. Well, he has on occasion forgot to return them. And he said the last one, he was so mad at himself. This was one where DC had you tear off all the covers and return the covers. Well, and throw out the books. Well, guess what? He tore off all the covers, put them in a box, threw out the covers, and kept the box of coverless books. And then 3 months later, when it was time to return them, he opened up the box to return the covers, and he had all the coverless. He was like, ah.
And I'm sure he probably wasn't the first comic book shop to do that. Now you times that by a bunch, it makes, it's not a bad idea for a comic book company to do that because they're not really losing money.
That's how Spawn got so popular in the last few years too. Besides all of the press he got from issue 300, which really did get a lot of Spawn fans back reading Spawn. I don't know if it's still returnable. I think it might be. But he made for like 2 years, he made all issues of Spawn returnable.
Oh, okay.
So that comic shops go to order extra copies and have for all those new fans who are coming back. I don't know if it's still returnable. It might be because I see a bunch of copies in there.
I think I actually went to the comic book shop and picked that up when they came out.
Yeah, I didn't pick up 300 because it was too expensive. I picked up the stuff after it went back down to $2.99. I bought issues of it. Got Death of Elektra coverless a few months back for free that way. Well, see, by the time Death of Elektra came out, I wouldn't think they were doing that anymore. But why else would someone rip the cover off a book? And that's also why you get these old Silver Age books that have, married to another cover, because someone could find a really nice coverless copy and find a cover for it.
Mm-hmm.
Paper book comic distribution is still a problem. Small shops may eventually disappear over time. Much depends on the popularity of digital. Yeah, Saul is a real digital guy. He's big on digital. I must say, in reading Todd is desperate to rise numbers and get Spawn a TV show. I don't blame him. What else can we sell Jared for $2.99? Exactly. I'm a sucker for $2.99, so whatever you get out there, you get.
Putting Prophet by Rob Liefeld. Would you wear that for $2.99?
I would, damn it. He'll never put it out for $2.99. Though I just saw, who was it? Travis Oddfellow's Thoughts was saying that we were discussing, I think, last week that something in Comic Shop News. The Mike Allred Superman book that's coming out that had me a little interested. Mm-hmm. Oddfellow's Travis, I saw him post on Twitter today. 3 issues, $10 an issue. He's like, the first issue of it is $10. He's like, I was interested in it, but $10? I'm like, no, thank you.
How many pages?
I'm sure it's double-sized or something. But Steve, why? If I want to read that, they're going to have a trade that you can get for $20. Saul likes both digital and paper. Yeah. But like I said, I read one of my favorite books. I'll pull it out again. It's a Good Life If You Don't Weaken. I bought the Amazon digital version of it just because I love this book so much. I wanted the digital version too. I already have a scanned digital version of it, but I wanted the official one. The digital version had the guided view, which I was reading and it was really interesting. Usually I don't like the guided view because I like the design of a page and blah, 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 blah. That's what a comic book is, blah, blah, blah. But I had a lot of fun reading this one in the guided view because this is the one, like I said, it's one of my favorites. I know it well, but reading it in guided view was kind of a new way to read it for me. So it was really interesting to see all of these panels blown up to the size of an iPad. Each panel was the size of this book right here. So I just found it really, and I noticed details in it, of course, I didn't see before because this is only a 6x9 book. It was printed comic book size too in the original comic book. I wish they printed a comic book size version of it, but they never did. But I must say, I don't know if I want to read anything for the first time with a guided view, but something I know really well in the guided view was interesting. It was an interesting read. Most featured book in this show. Yeah. I've had it out a lot recently because I think I just reread it in March too. So I had it out then. And Wilson was telling me something interesting about the guided view this week too that I didn't know before.
Yeah, from putting up books in Comixology, I believe one of the reasons why it took a while between the time you put up a book and the book comes out was that someone had to be doing the guided view at Comixology. But now that they switched over to full Amazon, I was reading one of the things we have to do now as we're putting up the book. We, as the publisher, are now responsible to creating the guided view. So it used to take 5 minutes to put up a book. You know, you put the book up, you put in the information, the metadata, you know, who's the penciler, inker, colorist, all that type of stuff, and then you upload it. But now when you upload it, then you go in and you have to edit and create the guided view yourself. So one aspect, as a creator, you get to do it. So, you know, you're actually creating the guided view to whatever you like to do it. But then at the same time, that's going to take up so much more time to do a 22-page book. And then each book has, 5-6 panels that you have to do each and every time on the computer system that you're connected to. I don't know how long that's going to take. So they took something that was just 5 minutes to now doing it yourself. So now they basically put the work on whoever's uploading it.
Or not do it at all. So that might lead to fewer guided views.
I can see it leading to fewer. Because the moment I read that, it's like, I don't want to do that. Because I put up books for other publishers. As the art director, I get asked, hey, can you put this book up for us? And that's fine, because I have all the files anyway, because I put the book together for print. I offer not only putting it together for print, but for digital as well.
Yes,
it's very similar.
It's just making another PDF.
Make another PDF, but in RGB. That's the only real difference, is switching from one thing to another. And so, of course, again, that's something that I could do. It doesn't take too long. But now if I have to spend that time cutting those out, it's not cost effective. Because there's just no way I could spend that many hours doing it. And it's probably going to be maybe 10 minutes per page, but that adds up after a while. But you have a bunch of books. So I can see guided view being one of those things that if they don't automate it, then it's something that's not going to be available.
Yeah, I didn't know that about Comixology.
And that's what I've read. I haven't done it so far yet.
Yeah, I haven't noticed. Yeah, single panels can be cool on digital, but some artists doesn't look good. Appreciate a full page layout with complexity and style. Riley, right? Yeah, I'm like I said, I'd never want to read anything for the first time in guided view because, like I said, layout is everything when it comes to storytelling. That's how you control the story and how fast or slow the reader goes. Guided view wrecks all that. And, you know, digital double page spreads have the opposite effect of what they're intended to have. You're supposed to turn a double page spread and it hits you like, wow. On digital, you turn a double page spread and it shrinks it. You're like, oh. So, but like I said, for something like this that I know well, guided view was a nice little change of pace. Nice little change of pace. And another comic I got this week was one from last week that got shorted. Norse mythology. Terrific stuff. I'm just such a huge Craig Russell fan. And he's doing the he's adapting Neil Gaiman's book. So Neil Gaiman actually doesn't have anything to do with the comic itself. Craig Russell does the script from Neil Gaiman's book. and he's doing the layouts, and the art is actually by Galen Showman, who I don't know who that is. Galen Showman, but he's really aping Craig Russell in this. I know Craig Russell did the layouts, but he's really aping Craig Russell's style, and he does a nice job of it. And this is the story of Loki being an asshole, turning into a giant salmon to try to get after he curses all the gods. But the novel. I don't even think it's a novel. It's Neil Gaiman. He did a text adaptation of a bunch of Norse mythology, and I guess Craig Russell decided to adapt it because he adapts a lot of Neil Gaiman stuff, and this is volume 3, issue 4, 6 issues in each volume, and each one's just terrific. Mm-hmm. Seth is a classically well-dressed guy, but doesn't fully translate to his comics, which I find a pity. Probably did a top job with clothing on monsters. Gus is our clothing guy. Yeah, he's Seth likes all that old clothes. He likes to wear a hat and shirt and collar and overcoat. Like I have an art book by Seth that's pretty nice too. One of those old. It must be 20 years old now. It's amazing how old things get. Well, like he's one of my favorite cartoonists, and that hardly anyone's read. It's a good life. Like I really wish they put out a comic book size one of this. I have a piece of his original art too.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, he doesn't sell the inks, but he sells his pencils that come, which are all on tracing paper. And like individual pieces of tracing paper. So when I got them, I taped to. I took all the tape off them and used some archival tape and taped them down to an actual piece of artboard. So and put it in Mylar so I could actually present it, kind of, because it's like it's not really a page, but it is a page. It's over here somewhere. Hold on.
That kind of reminds me of the legend that Steve Ditko used to do all of his layouts on typewriting paper, and then would blow it up and finish them that way.
Here it is. So it's on this just tracing paper. You can see the stains from where the tape was, but he did it, and I actually took the finished. This is a scan right from the book of the page that I blew up and put in the back. But there's some nice pencils. So we can get some of this on there. Yeah, like I said, I saw this for sale once. Wasn't cheap. Wasn't that? It cost me a couple $100, I think. But his stuff goes for much more than that now. I got it like 15 years ago. It might be nice to reprint some old comics using modern coloring techniques. Some of the old colors and print quality killed some books. Yeah, Michael Golden's Nam. There was a period, like I know that like Silver Age guys love that old Silver Age coloring. But there was some stuff in the 80s where people were really trying new stuff with coloring that the newsprint lost. And the Nam sounds like it's probably one of them. Though I haven't seen that stuff in a while. And some of it, and also, like I said last with especially it happened with me with a lot of DC books, when they're using those flexographic printings, the plastic printing plates, and you got some of the comics from the end of the print run, they looked terrible. And some of my Teen Titans really looked terrible. I mean, because it's plastic. The print, it would kind of melt it would spread. And it was just like, whew. There was no crisp black line. There was mess. Yeah. Going back to some of the newsstand stuff, it's a miracle how some of it has survived over time. Yeah, I find newsstand stuff I pick up no matter what. Yeah. that it depends on when it's from. There's kind of this myth that newsstand stuff is harder, especially. People. I hear this myth all the time on YouTube that the newsstand stuff is harder to find in good condition because people who bought from the newsstand didn't keep it in good condition. I'm like, yes, they did. I bought tons of stuff from the newsstand and I kept it in good condition. Maybe the stuff maybe a higher percentage of the stuff from the comic shop.
I know if Jared Osborne did it.
Yeah, and I assure you,
most likely so did everybody else.
Lots of other people did. If you loved your comics, you tried to keep them in good condition.
Jared
no matter where you bought them from. Not everybody's a slob like Chris Russo and just throws his toys all over his studio willy-nilly every which way.
Anyway,
I just want to point out that Chris is in that studio where the toys are highly organized. But you'd have to prove to me that that somehow kids who bought off the newsstand in 1987 treated their comics worse than kids who bought in the comic shop. That and there's also percentages. If 100,000 people bought their comics from a newsstand and 20,000 of them kept them in nice condition, that's the same as if there's 20,000 people buying them in the comic shop, all keeping them in nice condition.
I think it also has to go with a lot of those. We've all seen almost pretty much the same photos from that time period where you have a bunch of kids reading books right in front of the newsstand, sitting there bending the books and stuff.
They're talking more about the 80s when both the newsstand and direct market was around.
Oh, are they? Okay.
That's really the era they're talking about.
Yeah, I bought them from the newsstands. My Ghost Riders, the Ghost Rider I bought from a Subway newsstand because that was the only place I could find them.
And you took care of it, didn't you?
Yeah. I ended up reselling it a lot later because of that.
Yeah, Marvel Fanfare, Baxter paper. I remember
Baxter
that.
paper was a beautiful paper.
But I want to point out, I pulled out my X-Men Teen Titans, and it had yellowed. I was like, this Baxter paper isn't supposed to yellow. I demanded my money back from Walt Simonson, but
what did he say?
He said he didn't make me any promises. It wasn't him.
Oh.
There's also a point where more copies were sold in the comic shop than in the newsstand. That I can understand. Like in the early 90s, I think sometime in the late 80s, early 90s is when the point shifted from newsstand to direct market. But I still find it funny that people are like, "Ooh, I got this one. It's a newsstand version, so I bought it." And I'm like, collectors need something to collect. That's all that is. Especially
you're also selling the story. That's what makes it more valuable.
That's what makes it more valuable. There was fewer copies on the news, but as the guy who was the one who put the slug on, that was the difference between the newsstand and the direct market edition. I'm like, there's no difference. I just put the other one. I just put the slug. I paper clip it on, and the printer slips that in later on.
That's right. You put the slug on there. You personally delivered every copy to every newsstand, and
no, I did not do that. I was just the one who put the slug on there. Why do you got to add to the story? Why do you got to make things up at the end of my story?
Then you sold them
I
to
tell a story, right? And then you just start lying. What's that all about?
You sold them to each child. You followed the children home, watched the way that they organized their comics, filed them and put them in bags and boards. So they were keeping them in very good condition. They were taking care of those books.
Prove to me they didn't. Do the indies in the late 80s, 90s make better quality books? I think it varied. They were mostly black and white, the indies stuff. I mean, I don't know that they were most of they were trying to get away with. I can't remember the paper quality being any better at the indies than at Marvel or DC. But since it was
hard at
black and
first
white,
because it was whatever was the cheapest. That's why it was
Yeah.
in black and white. So it was whatever was on there. And then there's gang printing, so it might have been the same stuff Marvel and DC was using, but would not
right?
in the color.
Yeah, and sometimes without some of the black and white printing looked better than the color printing. Sometimes, so even though it was the same printing, it just looked better because more could go wrong with color. Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, the Mark Jeweler inserts in Spec Value 2. I just exactly those are once again. I accidentally bought a Mark Jeweler insert comic a couple years ago, and I was disappointed.
I don't believe that for a second. You bought it on purpose.
Have you ever seen the Mark Jeweler insert comics?
I know of them. I don't think I've ever actually held one.
There's just an extra ad placed in the centerfold.
Right.
The problem is for me as a reader, it's a cardstock ad. So like any other, they've done that before with other comics. With any other, it's stiffer than the newsprint, so it makes it tougher to read. So that's why I was disappointed with it. But since it was lower distribution, that was only distributed through Army posts.
Breaking news: Jared Osborne, biggest fan of Jeweler inserts.
I wonder if the higher priced comics from the late 80s on killed the ability to sell on the new. No, the newsstand did not want comics because they were too cheap.
It was a low price point. You could sell a magazine, take that space to sell a magazine for $4.95, then a 75-cent comic book.
Yeah, newsstands never liked comics, even though they sold them. And here's something I only learned a few years ago. One of the reasons Playboy magazine took off was because comics were collapsing in whatever year that was. So there were fewer comics being distributed in the US. So they needed stuff to distribute, and Playboy magazine was just coming out then. So that was one of the things they distributed.
Well, Playboy was distributed by American News, which was the same mafia-run company that disappeared completely in a single month in 1957 and left Martin Goodman to go and ask DC to distribute them.
So okay, that was the one that Martin Goodman shut down his own distribution network to go with too.
Yeah,
Chris and Jared Selleck remarried. That's just Chris being contentious. He can't help it.
If you like this dynamic, listen to my episode of Cruising Together featuring Jared Osborne as a special guest. Go to hatterentertainment.com/cruising.
Which movie was
it? Cocktail.
Cocktail. It was Cocktail.
Yeah.
I missed that one. I got to go back and watch that one.
Chris does nothing but berate me, and I don't put up with it.
It's a classic. I just felt like the gloves were on. The only podcast in the entire run, the only episode where I was like, I'm going after this guy. Every other episode, I'm perfectly polite to every guest, as a host ought to be. But Jared just trained me in a Pavlovian way. Much in the way he trained me in pre-press production at Marvel, he also trained me to spar verbally.
We'll give them a little picture of what the bullpen used to be in the 90s. There used to be Bunch dubbed it verbal brinksmanship. So what you do, you have to picture a room full of, at its peak, 35 people, but any given time, 20 to 35 people. Everybody very creative. Everybody, allowed to talk as we do our boring job. So what we would always end up doing was, verbally sparring with each other. The whole point was to try and get the other guy to break, to be mad. And the other guy doesn't want to be mad, so he's sparring back with you. And we would do that all day, every day. And when the new people came in, They were just like, holy cow, what's going on here? Until they were properly trained in sparring and could join in. And Chris was one of those people who is, now that he's properly trained, he always wants to test me. Because he's got no one to spar with now.
I beat you very recently.
Probably did. I'm out of practice. I sit here by myself all day, and
I know your weakness. And you probably know what I'm about to say.
There it is. Episode 10, Cruising Together, number 10, Cocktail.
That's right.
April 20th, 2015.
Your weakness,
my weakness is I'm not in the bullpen anymore.
Your weakness is the
I'm not
definition.
that bored.
Your weakness is definitions.
Definitions. Well, I do like to define things when I'm talking.
Definition of sports.
See that, but that's why I don't discuss that with you, because you've got no definition.
I refer to the definition.
You use words that you don't even know what they mean. Okay, is checkers a sport? Are esports sports? You tell me. We'll do that another time.
Listeners, do the listeners who thinks baseball is a sport?
I watched a channel yesterday that was all about slabbing and key issues and trends and stuff. They kept saying raw copies. What's a raw? A raw comic is just a comic that's not slabbed. That's what they call this is a raw comic.
Or as we used to say before all these lunatics came about, a comic.
Is a raw comic. That's all it is.
It's a regular everyday comic before it was slabbed.
They can't be. A comic can't be a comic anymore to these slabbers. There's just a raw comic waiting to be slabbed. As a New Mutants 93 Mark Jeweler, Easy Pro Wrestling and Comics. And what is it now? They have that X-Men #1 with Bo Jackson Club. I don't know that one.
I don't know what that is.
That must have been a new one they found. But the next comic I got this week out of my 4 is Usagi Yojimbo. You can't tell because they obliterated the logo. They don't usually do that in Usagi.
Yeah, breaking rules.
Yeah.
Not supposed
but I
to.
guess they wanted a 4-tailed tiger, and it's as good as every other issue of Usagi Yojimbo. I enjoy them all. Stan Sakai is just a master. Next month, nice cover there. And hold on, I have to read what his cousin's name is because I don't know it. Yukichi. I have to memorize that one of these months. He's been around for many issues now. Yukichi. But we get a bunch of bandits. We get Usagi guarding a precious object. We get him riling Yukichi up, much like Chris was riling me up.
That's where I learned it.
You learned it from Usagi.
Learned it from watching you.
Well, that's the truth. You're not in the bullpen anymore, Chris. You can relax.
I'm working on comics and I'm listening to you talk. I'm in the bullpen.
And I pop in every once in a while, take a look, and then go.
This last bot standing says cover by Stan Sakai. I would have never known that was a Stan Sakai cover.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Maybe because it's so minimalist. But yeah. I don't know what the story is. When the last stars flicker and fade, who will be the only Cybertronian left? Oh, it's Transformer.
Oh.
I guess it's kind of like The Last Ronin, only with Transformers. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle one they just put out.
Right.
The last Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle story. I pulled this off my shelf today and was looking at it. Here's a book I wish I should have bought more copies of. Have you ever seen this one? The Silver Age of Superman, the greatest covers of Action Comics from the
I
30s to the 70s. It came out
had
in
something similar.
1996. And I don't know why, but they're mostly shot from actual comic book covers rather than DC's archives. I'm not quite sure why that is.
Maybe it's a third publisher.
Maybe it was just easier for them in the beginning of the digital age. DC wasn't digitized yet in 95. Mark Waid wrote the bits of text in it. But it's just I'm a sucker for any book that has comic book covers in it to begin with.
I'm the same way. I have books like that from different eras.
You give me a collection of comic book covers, and I'm there. I even bought a few years ago. What was that? DC 52 was the name of their weekly series from, like, I don't know, 20 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
There's a series called 52 that I think,
Right.
what's his name? J.G. Jones did all the covers for. I wasn't interested in the series. I didn't buy it, but they came out with a book of all the covers. I was like, all right, you got me.
Yeah.
Like, I have that on my shelf. So it's like, I just like any book with comic book covers in it.
I even have one called Graven Images, and they're all movie posters.
Okay.
All horror movie posters.
Movie posters are okay, but of course I prefer comic book covers.
But I have a couple of comic book ones.
The EC Covers Artist Edition is great. I had that in my hands for an hour and sent it back because it was destroyed. I bought a used copy of it. I told this story a few weeks ago. Used copy of it on Amazon. It showed up to my house. All four corners looked like they were hit with a sledgehammer. So I had to return it, and I just haven't got another copy. I haven't got the money to get an actual another copy of it. So one of these days I will. But this right here, I used to, in the 90s, my friend Rob, my one friend from high school, ever since high school, all through the 90s and before he moved to New Jersey, somewhere in the mid 2000s, he used to pick me up on Saturdays. We'd go to the bookstore, we'd go to the video game store, we'd go to the comic store. So I'd always check at the bookstore what was, on the cutout bin, the discount table. And that's where I got this. $3 in like 1998 or something. And they had a stack of them. I'm telling you, I should have bought 10 copies of it just to give out as presents over the years or something. Because to this day, I'm like, $3 and I only bought one copy of it. Like, I've been giving them to friends for birthdays and Christmases for years. Because this is well worth $3, that's for sure.
Oh, for sure. Definitely.
Maybe 10 years ago, I ordered from, must have been Amazon, what I thought was a Wonder Woman version of this. But it turned out to be about 4 inches by 3 inches. I'm like, it's okay, but it's a little small. I still have it back there somewhere, but it's not nearly as nice to look at as that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, every time I see books like that, I do pick them up because I've seen them from different time periods as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Any book like that. I've got a book of Walking Dead sketch covers for charity or something like that. Like anytime I see any book on comic book cover, Chris Gerusso's cover for The Walking Dead is in there. Been seeing lots of people selling old ads for Captain Action #1 and various others on eBay. Would love to have some posters. Oh, who was it? Has anyone seen Graphic Man's posters? He pops up on here sometimes. He does. Paulo's on his Wednesday night show. Who was it? I think it was Dr. Silver Age. No, Comic Crypt of Castle Hills. Just got a package from Graphic Man, who hosts the show Wednesday nights on his channel. And Graphic Man does these sort of pop culture mashup movie and comic book posters.
Mm-hmm.
Like he had Richie Rich and Casper on a DC mystery mag from the 70s cover. He had a Mole Man movie poster that he put the Fantastic Four in. He does all sorts of stuff like that. It was interesting to see. I had first time I had seen them was on Comic Crypt of Castle Hill's channel today. So they're pretty. If you like movie posters, check those out.
All right, cool.
Go to Graphic Man's channels or see if he has a link to any of his stuff, or go to Comic Crypt of Castle Hills and see the actual posters that he got. They were pretty cool looking. Pretty cool looking. Bum, bum, bum. Want to see the last comic I got this week? And I found out I got the release of number 2. There's an uncensored version. This is I Hate This Place. The uncensored version is Fuck This Place. And it was pretty good. It's a haunted house story. The art was okay. Not terrific. But sort of, I don't know. It's kind of this indie comic style I see. Where it's not quite the just get it done artwork that I sometimes see. But there's a looseness. There's a looseness to the style and sort of a Paul Pope-nish to it. There's a... I don't quite have a name for this style, but you see it around a lot of indie books, especially, indie books with sort of regular people in it. Everything is I don't think Gus will like the clothes. There's sort of, the clothes aren't bad, but there's sort of a looseness to all the clothes. And there's a looseness to a lot of the drawing. But there's generally good storytelling. Let's see, who's the artist on this one? Artym. How do you pronounce that name? Artyom Toplin. And I like the cover. I like the blues and purples on the cover. But I think I'm getting a second issue of this because I enjoyed the story. It was this these two women who are a couple. One of them just inherited a cattle ranch of some kind. And their plan is to go to the ranch, live there for a year, take care of all the cattle so they have to take care of the cattle for a year until it's selling season. Sell off the cattle, sell the ranch, and then get on with their lives to do what they want. But it turns out this ranch is full of UFOs or ghosts or something. And once I think, and her great aunt left her this ranch. Eventually they find out, and it's they don't know what the heck's going on. The one woman's asleep. This is the woman who, one of the ghosts touches her, and she wakes up on the train tracks and has to or the train track, jump out of it's the next page. With her foot caught in the ties of the train tracks. So she's got to jump out of the way of the train to live. And then she's like, what the heck is going on? Eventually finds a special room. It's where is it? Where are the rules? Here are the rules. Don't let the ghosts touch you. Never go into the woods. And if you see the horned man, you run as far and fast as you can. And you can't leave this property now for some reason. So it's setting up a nice ghost story, horror story thing going on. So I enjoyed the first issue. That's Chris's weakness. He doesn't like rules. Oh, yeah? I have to run? What if I just saunter? Would that be good? What if I skip? Could I skip? That's not running, but I could move nearly as fast when I'm skipping as when I'm running.
Yeah,
What if I get
I could beat you in a race if I was skipping and you're sprinting. I know it.
Okay, Costanza. No, that was Jerry, pardon me. Okay, Seinfeld. Chris will have nothing with your rules.
I didn't even hear the rule you made.
Gus, I'm fine with that. Modern clothing has no rules. My rule for modern clothing is, for comic book artists, is don't draw generic clothing. Draw a specific piece of clothing. If you're drawing modern stuff, it is so easy to find reference for modern clothing. Don't just draw generic shirt and pants. Draw a specific type. Thought I saw a shadow move.
I don't disagree with you, but I certainly don't follow that rule.
Well, you're not trying to draw realistic clothing anywhere. Your clothing
right now, everybody I'm drawing is fish, and they're all wearing T-shirts, and that's about it.
You're drawing graphic design clothing. That rule doesn't count for superheroes either. That's only for ordinary people, because you'll often see superhero artists who draw great superhero costumes, but when they draw a man standing there in a T-shirt and jeans, or a woman in a top, it's just terrible, because they're drawing whatever generic top is in their brain rather than an actual top. They didn't look in a fashion magazine, or these days, a fashion app. Mm-hmm. So did you read anything this week, Paulo?
No time today. No time this week.
No. What were you writing?
I haven't had time to start writing. Although I did pick up a car to test drive.
When you pick up a car to test drive, where do you keep it?
At home.
Do you bring it home with you?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's parked out there in the street.
King's been drawing a lot of early 90s clothes and hair for the Gigi book, all from reference. Okay, yeah. King Spo's been doing a Gigi Allen comic. He's a graphic novel he's working on. That new style with the indies reminds me of mid-90s Vertigo books, all acid-wrapped and scratchy. I like it, but it's a cliche a bit. I call it grungy ink. Yeah, but I think there's a distinction. I call those 90s Vertigo books corporate indie books. Wow, 63 pages done of his graphic novel. Nice. Corporate indie books, because most of the guys who drew for like Vertigo in the 90s were like professionals, kind of. They were a lot of these indie guys aren't really professionals. And there's kind of stuff they don't know because they're not professionals, but they just get along anyway, because you don't have to be a professional to draw a comic. But it's kind of what they don't know kind of converges into a style somehow in my mind. I don't know what to call it. It's strange. Like on this cover, looks like he referenced some of this, but their clothes are shapeless. And those folds are in no way based on the reality of kind of folds. They're just kind of an idea he has of folds. But I can tell he looked at some clothes. I mean, that's a specific kind of in a specific way to move your legs.
That's a puffy shirt.
That's a puffy shirt, definitely. But like professional... Back in the day, like if Al Williamson or professionals like that were to draw clothes, all the clothes would kind of be sharp and perfect and look like professionally trained guys who were taught how to draw clothes. This style, they just kind of muddle their way through drawing clothes. And it's actually not bad. But you can, because like she's got there's a specific collar drawn for that, which is good. a specific patch. So this is a specific jacket, which is all good stuff. But the folds are just kind of not. I'm not telling you I draw great realistic folds or anything like that, because I don't. I am no Al Williamson. But it all becomes about. It doesn't. It all becomes about drawing a jacket, not drawing a realistic jacket kind of thing. But also not drawing the style is weird. The style is like I'm drawing like if Chris were to draw this jacket right here, he'd make it into a graphic design. He'd figure out exactly how this jacket is going to, exactly how the sleeve is going to look.
I think
Exactly
most
how
likely
the
that'd
collar
fail.
is gonna look. What was that?
I would most likely fail.
Yeah, well, no, you're not drawing it in your style. You'd simplify it down to your style. They're not simplifying anything down to their style. They're just kind of drawing freeform. It's sort of a freeform cartooning. I think maybe that's it. Because they're not going for any specific. They're not like looking at Al Williamson and saying, "Wow, he does folds great. Let me figure out how exactly. Let me look at some folds and figure out exactly how which side the shadow goes on." They're just going folds. There's some darks, some lights. We're going to freeform this drawing. The color saves that puffy shirt and its wrinkles. It probably looks completely flat in black and white. The color definitely does add to it. Clothing is omnipresent, thus my picking with it. Stylized clothing is fine too. It's the not understanding the basics that makes me, that's fine. Like I said, stylized clothing is good, but if you're going to draw realistic clothing, got to make it realistic. Hence me taking so much time and Gus helping me with that Gatsby clothing.
I pick on people who don't know how to draw cars.
Yes. If you're going to draw a car, draw a specific car.
Right. Otherwise, we get generic brick in somewhat of a form of a sedan.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're talking my language.
If you need a generic brick drawn like a sedan, Chris is your guy.
Yeah, I bet you love Japanese cars from the 1970s.
I was just, for my Gatsby project today and yesterday, finding reference for French windows. Just because, and it's really weird because I had this thumbnail. And it makes no sense that it makes no realistic sense. This isn't quite the final one either. I forgot the line down the middle. This is I wanted Gatsby's head giant behind the French windows. But it's like I had to look. I didn't want to just draw rectangles. I had to look at some French windows and figure out exactly and get some of the detail from the bottom, just the bottom gutter of the house and a little bit of upper top of the eaves just to stick in there. But I was like, I can't just draw a generic window because it won't look interesting. So I found like 20 different French windows, which, by the way, 3/4 of them are generic windows. I had to find a way to make it look interesting. Drawing futuristic clothes that look great. That's a true skill. Grendel. The Christine Spar issues, the Pander brothers. They had a lot of weird fashion drawing in that stuff.
They had what people in the 80s thought people in 2010 were going to wear.
Giant collars and giant shoulder pads. Angles everywhere. Yeah, we're still not wearing that Star Trek outfit, man. Well, actually, now that I think about it, the Star Trek unitard
Under Armour
yoga pants are coming pretty close to that. I don't know. I don't know how much yoga pants get worn around the rest of the country, but sometimes when I'm walking in Manhattan, I'm like, "You're out in public in those pants?" There's a lot of yoga pants out in the streets of
But
Manhattan.
it's not just yoga pants. You're right. It's closer to Star Trek because it's like yoga pants with like reinforced panels in certain places.
Spanx. I haven't seen the yoga pants and the Spanx, but summer's coming, so maybe I will. Needs a lot of knowledge to be done well. No, you just have to put shoulder pads and giant collars. We just said that. The Panda Brothers got it down. Or everybody in rags if it's post-apocalyptic. Yeah, I never realized that until this moment. Yoga pants are getting close to the Star Trek unitard. At least the bottoms.
Makes it easy for the cosplayers.
Yeah. I love the Dada Bauhaus fashion. We should start wearing that now. I am not familiar with Dada Bauhaus fashion.
What is that, the Bauhaus fashion?
I know what Dada is. I know what Bauhaus is. Actually, I should say I have a general idea of what Bauhaus is. I only know a little bit about it. Oh yeah, Mobius. I think went with a lot of the unitard future fashion too. I have pictures of it of the Bauhaus Dada. My fashion and some of my stuff is really weird. Everyone start dressing like Ravaged 2099. There's a callback for you. Cone dresses. Ah, okay. Yeah, I got some of that in my stuff. Weird shapes and weird shapes and things.
So, although not comic books, but comic books related, my excitement this week happened to be that they announced that Marvel Legends are now finally doing the Japanese Spider-Man action figure. Out of the blue, but it's something I'm looking forward to. Just because it's Spider-Man, it's something unique, and I thought that was kind of a fun thing.
Kaluda's another good future fashion guy. We'll soon all dressed like superheroes. So the Japanese Spider-Man, and what else is coming? I saw you post Japanese Spider-Man.
Japanese Spider-Man, Firestorm.
Firestorm.
And
no, not Firestorm. Firelord.
Firelord. Sorry, that's right.
Firelord.
Firelord. And
Marvel.
a Mojo set, which is Mojo, Dazzler, Baby Wolverine, and Longshot. Although I don't know why they did Dazzler when Spiral is usually with them, but that's the whole box set. That looks like a TV set because it's the Mojo channel, so to speak.
For some reason, one of the things I took home from Marvel was this Spider-Man gargoyle head. I've got 4 of them.
Do you?
Yes.
Nice.
I don't know why I don't have a ton of toys. I don't know why I liked this one so much.
Yeah, that's from the first Spider-Man movie from that set, Toy Biz. So that's Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, and each one of those sets came with a playable piece. So you have the gargoyle. Mary Jane came with a collapsible balcony. Norman Osborn came with a chair, and one of the best ones was J. Jonah Jameson came with a desk that had items that were loose on it, and his action pose was that he would slam his arm on the desk, and it makes everything move on the desk.
Well, I never saw any. For some reason, like I said, somebody must not have liked these because I eventually picked up 4 around the office.
Nice.
And they're all just kind of hanging up.
Those are really cool because you can hang it on the wall.
I like
it has that whole gargoyle Chrysler building feel to it.
There he is. Like I said, I only have a handful of toys, But one of them that I have that I love is this old school Shang-Chi with a belt that never stays on.
Nice.
Still like that one.
Cool.
Oh. And this one a friend gave me like 25 years ago. This was from, I forget what the, Kenner, Action Man or something. It was from some little set. These used to be ubiquitous in the 70s.
That I don't recognize.
I'm surprised you don't recognize it.
Kenner.
I think that his name was Action Man. I don't know why she gave this to me. She just gave it to me one day, and it's been sitting here ever since. You recognize that, Chris?
No.
I'll have to do a Google image search of it.
Yeah, because the Action Man that I'm aware of was a larger figure.
Yeah, it might not be Action Man. It might be Action something. Action Adventure.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember now. But yeah, I remember there used to be a lot of them around. Already said today that Barry Windsor Monsters clothing is top notch. Yeah.
Yeah, those hands do look like Action Man toys.
There was an Action Man that looked like that?
The hands look like a typical Action Man toy.
Okay.
I can't find that design.
Yeah, I was thinking there was a bigger Action Man too, like the Mego size or something, but different than that. Action Man. Yeah, I don't know which one that is. Like I said, she came to sometime in the 90s, maybe even early 90s. That thing's been sitting around my studio that long. Sometimes things just hang around. Keep on trucking. That's what I just noticed this up here. Things that hang around. Did you go to Flo's memorial service, either of you two?
Yes, I did.
They had a table full of tchotchkes from Flo's apartment that they were giving out to everyone at her memorial service. And this is a "Keep on Truckin' pin with the Robert Crumb drawing on it.
Oh, nice.
That's what I got from Flo's memorial. Keep on trucking. Sits up here on my lamp.
And then today, Wednesday, I think it was, I picked up from the thrift store, picked up one of these superpowers.
Finding where the camera is. Ah. Running away, Superman. Run away, run away. It's funny, I just realized that's another thing I learned at Marvel in my bullpen days, is how to hang things off my lamp. Let me see if I can show you this. I'm going to turn off this light here for a minute. Oh, where is it? You bend over a paper clip and hang your French curves off your lamp and hang your ellipse templates off your lamp and random things too. So I just realized in looking, that's one of the things I learned at working in the Marvel bullpen, how artists hang things off their lamps.
The only thing I have hanging off my desk lamp is a brush where, when you erase something and then you just take the brush.
Oh, okay.
So that's the only thing that I have hanging off my lamp, and a Spider-Ham toy from McDonald's.
I have a bunch of things hanging off my lamp. Circle template. Oh, there we go. I've got, speaking of toys, an Oreo cookie action figure.
Oh, wow. It's a strange looking one.
I
I've
got,
never seen it.
I got this from once again at Marvel. Do you remember Hildy Mesnick's assistant, Lisa Zampella?
Yeah.
She had this in her office once. And I was like, "Ooh, that looks so cool." And she's like, "You can have it." I was like, "Okay." And I've had it ever since, hanging from my lamp. I've never seen another a bendy Oreo cookie toy figure like
No, I've never seen one of those.
Almost wonder what's the point.
that. I don't know, to sell Oreos?
Merchandising.
Well, I want to buy Oreos. I can buy Oreos. I don't feel that seeing that bendy stretchy thing doesn't make me want to buy Oreos.
For you to say, "Wow, that's cool." I put old episodes of the 60s Spider-Man cartoon last night. Those crazy colors and Ralph Bakshi watercolored backgrounds I've always absolutely loved.
Spider-Man does
reissued as
whatever.
retro comics. I don't
Spider-Man.
think I've seen those cartoons in 30 years.
Yeah,
They're hard to watch again. I could do maybe one or two, and then I have to walk away from it.
I'm pretty sure last time I watched them was in 92 or 93.
I always liked that. Can't remember what it was in. If it was an ambush bug or something else. A picture of, or it must have been a Marvel parody book of Spider-Man swinging like he was in the cartoon above the city. Him going, "Wow, I must be 80 stories up here. What the heck is this web line attached to?"
Blimps. We never see them. They were attached to blimps.
Way up there.
That was my rationale.
Blimps. It's the blimp. It's the blimp.
Blimp. They were all over the place back then.
It's the blimp. It's the blimp.
Yeah, that was an interesting cartoon because towards the end they ran out of money, so they used backgrounds from other cartoons that they did. That's why they had very generic villains that looked like they came from other places because they did. They were fantasy art or something like that, fantasy cartoon that they did. So they just basically put the Spider-Man cells in there.
Chris did that joke too? Oh, hold on. I gotta put him up here on. Hold it right there.
Fantastic.
I can't quite read that balloon and that thought balloon with my.
You don't need to.
Oh, okay.
His web's attached to a cloud.
Stuck to the cloud. I didn't even notice that. Duh.
The genius about that is it's not even mentioned, right? He doesn't even think of that. It's just there. That is genius. I'm gonna have to track that one panel down and just post that.
It was on. Here's a little inside baseball for everybody out there. I just said thought balloon. That's the proper term for it. Word balloon and thought balloon. Mm-hmm. Word bubble and thought bubble are not the right terms for them. Speaking of definitions, Chris, but
we're
in
100% agreement. But I hear it all the time because, like, word balloon, thought balloon is the comics industry.
Right.
The book industry, it's speech bubbles and thought bubbles, and it drives me nuts every time I hear it or see it in an email.
That's because, and I was trying to explain this to someone. Matter of fact, it was in Sleepy Reader's show on Sunday. Sleepy Reader and Comic Crack. They have a show on Sunday afternoons that they do. I was trying to explain to somebody that the word balloon and thought balloon on the property. I'm like, when you say word bubble and thought bubble, a letterer grits his teeth. And I'm like, I tried to, and they're like, why? Why do they care? I'm like, because you can't. I'm like, letterers find it disrespectful because you won't bother to learn the first thing about lettering. That's why lettering, it's like letterers are so disrespected and so unnoticed and so uncommented that you can't bother to learn the very first thing that letterers learn, which is what to call the things. And people
It's
get
like those
indignant when you
French.
tell them that.
It's like those French have a different word for
They
everything.
call an egg an oof. And I'm like trying to explain this to this guy, and he starts getting indignant. I'm like, this is exactly what sets letters. Like, it doesn't matter. He's like, well, here in England, they're interchangeable. I'm like, for the professionals or for the non-professionals? He's like, it doesn't matter. As long as somebody knows what you're talking about, it's all good. I'm like, all right. I tried to inform you of something, but you're not interested. That's why it disrespects letterers so much, is you're just not the least bit interested in thing one about lettering.
Yeah, the French can call it either a bulle or a ballon, but the correct technical term is phylactère.
What is that?
Not entirely sure. It looks Greek.
But like I said, everybody, the professional term, the proper term is word balloon and thought balloon. But and it was always like, the people who weren't interested in comics who called them bubbles. What's in the bubble there? What's the bubble?
Mm-hmm.
I was telling Greg the other day, and this is probably going to get me canceled, but I told Greg the other day, I said, word balloons are for boys and speech bubbles are for girls.
I'm canceling you right now. Where's the cancel button? The any key? I can't find the any key.
Phylactery, originally referred to tefillin, leather boxes containing Torah verses worn by some Jews when praying.
Oh, so maybe the caption boxes that it comes from.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
See, the French go to ancient Greek references to create the language of comics. Americans say, it's just the funny things.
The blimp. It's the blimp. I need the fly's eye to see it and the fly's ear to hear it. The blimp. I haven't heard Captain Beefheart in a long time. The blimp. That's what I think of every time I hear the blimp, man. Yeah, but that's like trying to explain to people who don't care about letterers that caring about letterers is a good thing. They just don't care.
Yeah. The bottom of the poll really is just that I became a letterer because of the glamour and the fame, but
that's why every now and then, like I have a running joke with Dave Sharp over the years where I say something like, "There goes a letterer thinking he's a human being again." Oh, they had the Captain Beefheart drummer on their second CD. Cool. The blimp. Dave Sharp's son just became a doctor of pharmacology.
Hey, I saw the post.
Yeah.
That's great. Last
So
time
Dave Sharp
he was a kid.
So Dave Sharp can finally retire?
I guess so.
Well, he graduated. Didn't mean he had the job yet.
You can always get a job as a pharmacist, I assume. I imagine they're in demand.
Dave will probably still letter, though, whenever he wants to not feel like a human being.
Yeah.
Can't leave that all behind.
It's a hidden art.
Robert Williams. He was on the Shiny Beast and Bat Chain Puller. Oh, is he the drummer? The drummer.
First name the, last name drummer.
What was that?
First name the, last name drummer.
I have got. Whoops! I got to do this without knocking over my speaker. My friend Rob gave this to me one Christmas. An action figure of the drummer from Planetary. It's got a planetary bottom down here. There,
Oh,
there it goes.
It had one.
It had one. Planetary. That orange looks like it's fading. I don't know if you can tell from, you probably can. Yeah, I can't tell on screen. But it looks like, not that it's been in the sun, or maybe it was in the sun on my desktop for a while. Cheap figure, not using light, fast colors.
yeah. Well, their figures only use plastic.
Guy with drumsticks. Let's see when. 2001 DC Comics. I don't think I got it in 2001. I have more action figures than I think. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. I got 16 action figures that I can see. I mean, I'm no Wilson or Chris, but
I couldn't even start counting them because they are literally all over the place. I could reach out and grab a bunch of Spider-Man. And from different eras, too. It's an old Toy Biz one.
What's your favorite Spider-Man?
Probably my Secret Wars Spider-Man. That's the one that started it all. It's my favorite to have, but as far as the action figures, these newer ones from Hasbro are really superposable.
Okay.
And I really actually like them. One of the things that I have a Hulk around here somewhere. I misplaced. But one of the things I was looking at was can these figures create the same poses like from the corner box art? Just about get it there. And it's like, oh, I might get some of these, pose them and take photos of them and recreate.
Make them into corner box art.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
Yeah, I was because I had a box from iPhone.
Okay.
And so this particular one I'm going to be turning into a bookshelf. I'm just testing out what it looks like. But the other side, which is deeper, which is the top of the iPhone, is actually pretty good to put a figure in there and pose it. So I'm thinking of doing that with the idea of basically creating a corner box art.
Okay.
So it'll be a way to like
box.
display certain figures.
You can also get, what are they called? I don't know what they're called. They're like little photo tents. I've seen them on Amazon.
Mhm.
It's like a fabric box about that big. They're supposed to be for photographing stuff. So
Okay.
it's like you just put the box, the sort of fabric box on a table as your background and put whatever you're photographing inside it.
Oh, okay.
That would probably help if you're looking to photograph little action figures and stuff, something like that. I'll have to find a link and send it to you because I can't remember what the name of it is.
All right.
What
'Cause
they
I do
call it.
have a photo box for when
Mhm.
I'm taking pictures for stuff for eBay.
Right.
But that I'll take a look at.
Yeah, there's a little bit bigger and a little bit more versatile
Okay, that's cool.
because it's made for photographing stuff.
Mhm.
We'll have to see. Made for photos. Only 4 comics this week. I think this was my lightest week in a while. And there wasn't, especially since there have been a few, there have been a few weeks recently where I've only had 4 comics on my pull list, but then found another 2 comics, like first issues or something to pick up. And but only 1 first issue this week. I hate this place.
Was there a new comic shop news this week?
There was.
What? Okay.
Hold on, let me go get it. I'll show you what it is.
Probably advertising another Marvel event.
Vampirella Year One.
No, okay.
I think, what's his name? Linsner here. Joseph Michael Linsner has been doing some Vampirella covers over the years. He does some pretty nice. And then there's some weird Disney-fied Vampirella over there. Oh, and here's one I just put on my pull list that I heard was coming. Somebody mentioned, I think, last week. This is the, what's his name? Eric Powell anthology comic that's coming out.
Oh, okay.
Albatross Press. Wish I got the fuck this place variant though. Yeah, I saw that. They mentioned that for issue number 2 in here. I was like, ooh, maybe I'll order that one, unless it's more. Like this, I think it was in here. An ice cream. The Final Secret of Hitler. I think I've read some of these. They're a series of European, maybe they're French. Who does this? Mariole, Piacentini, Humanoids puts it out here. But there's like a series of books about if the Nazis got their wonder weapons out in time and didn't necessarily lose World War II. I forget what the name of them. They're like named the Luftwaffe or something like that. So the war keeps going on.
The Luftwaffe was the Air Force.
Yeah, I think that's the name of the comic too. I'm not 100% sure. And here's one that got me interested. I was like, what the heck is this? It's a manga. And first of all, it's volume 5. And it's called Trapped in a Dating Sim. What?
That's an episode of Black Mirror.
Otami Games is tough for mobs. Oh, and there's a guy in the background, and there's a little arrow pointing at him that says MOB. I'm not sure what a mob is, but I guess that's him. But I'm just like, wow, I when I see this, I really am envious of the Japanese comic market. That there's a place in Japan for a trapped in a dating sim game. I wish there was such variety in ours. Back in the day, I used them to photograph art. Call them photo shoot tents. Yeah, they're named something like that. I hate this place. Yeah, I hate this place was good. I like that first issue. I'm definitely getting a second. Oh, and I still don't know how many issues that Great Gatsby series is going, but issue 7 is solicited in this. So I wonder if it'll go to 10 or 12. I forget how many chapters are in Gatsby. 10.
Le Dernier Secret d'Hitler was published last year by Humanoids in France. 120-page graphic novel.
Is that the Hitler one?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I figured it was because Humanoids is publishing it. I've read some of those digitally, but I've never seen them in real life. What the heck is all? P.S. Art Books Chilling Tales Facsimile Edition number 13? What is that? Chilling Tales Facsimile Edition 13, 17, all $20 a pop. I've never heard of them. They must be publishing facsimile editions of Golden Age books. Phantom Lady Facsimile Edition 14?
Yeah, Phantom Lady is Golden Age.
Right. Have you ever heard of PS Art Books?
No.
PS Art Book Charlton Premiere, Children of Doom magazine? I have no idea what all this is. Wow. This is one of those that's just got listings from Diamond. So some issues are just like that.
I've actually seen some of their books. Okay,
Yeah.
I never knew their name. PS Art Books. They got books like Horrors, Roy Thomas Presents.
Okay. Wunder Luftwaffe, maybe. A What If World War II. Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking of, I think. Wunder Luftwaffe. Jeff D saw some of those PSA books on the shelves last Wednesday. Wow.
Yeah, I
There's a
actually
scale
own-
modeling scene around that. I guess that the Luftwaffe one. Yeah, that's interesting. Looks like a collection of older comics bundled in one. It would have to be a collection if it's $20.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, because I believe I have one of these. They're hardcovers. They're like trade paperbacks of reprinted stuff.
Scanned from the original comics, right?
Yeah.
And cleaned up.
There's even a Roy Thomas Presents line.
Oh, okay. Well, it's time for us to sign off and let Paulo get to sleep because he's falling asleep right now.
Almost.
All right. Have a great weekend. It was wonderful.
Everybody have a good night out there. Chris, you have any final words for us?
Baseball is a sport.
Baseball is a sport. No doubt about it.
It's also amazingly boring.
No doubt about it. Wilson, any final words for us?
Words
I can speak.
No, hey, check this thing out. Man thing.
HeaderEntertainment.com/cruising. Cocktail, episode cocktail.
Definitely watch those.
Listen to Chris Giruso be mean to me since she's such a cruel individual.
I do have to say that the Hatter Entertainment podcasts are enjoyable to listen to.
Yeah.
Because occasionally they mention my name. So that's one of the main reasons why I like listening to it.
Listen to Greg Schiegel interview Robert Kirkman.
There you go.
Any last words for us, Paulo?
Nah. There's going to be a comics event in Portugal next weekend, but I'm not going to go.
There's his big announcement. He is not going to the comics event. So
I am not going to the comics event, and I am not going to meet people like Loisel and Altarriba.
Oh well. Well, everybody have a good night out there. Charity says, "Let's go Mets." All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Ending.